Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Innocence Lost. Vincent Caldwell had always prided himself on reading people. 20 years in the Marines, followed by a decade building his security consulting firm from nothing, had taught him to spot deception from a mile away. Yet somehow, he'd missed the signs in his own home. Sophie bounded into his home office that Tuesday evening, her 8-year-old face beaming with pride as she clutched a piece of construction paper. "Daddy, I made this for you." Vincent pushed aside the contracts he'd been reviewing and pulled his daughter onto his lap. The drawing was typical of Sophie's work, stick figures with oversized heads and rainbow-colored clothing. But this one was special. It showed their family, himself, Lydia, and Sophie, all holding hands beneath a bright rainbow. "I love it, sweetie," he said, kissing the top of her blonde head. "Let's hang it up right now." As he stood to place it on the cork board behind his desk, his eye caught something in the corner. Tiny words, written in Sophie's careful print. "I'm sorry." A chill ran down Vincent's spine. "Sophie, what are you sorry for?" His daughter's blue eyes, so much like his own, filled with tears. She pointed at the stick figure representing Lydia. "Mommy says this is the last drawing I'll get to make of you." The words hit Vincent like a physical blow. He knelt down to Sophie's level, keeping his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Mommy said, she said you might not live with us much longer. That Uncle Ryan might be my new daddy." Sophie's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't want Uncle Ryan to be my daddy. I want you." Vincent's vision darkened at the edges. Ryan Hoffman, Lydia's tennis instructor, a man who'd been coming to their house for private lessons for the past 6 months. Vincent had trusted his wife, trusted that her sudden interest in fitness was just another of her phases. He pulled Sophie close, inhaling her strawberry shampoo scent while his mind raced. "Listen to me, baby girl. I'm not going anywhere. I promise you that." But even as he comforted his daughter, Vincent was already calculating. He'd built an empire by outthinking his enemies, by being 10 steps ahead of everyone else. If Lydia thought she could blindside him, take his daughter, destroy everything he'd built, she was about to learn exactly who she'd married. After tucking Sophie into bed with extra stories and promises that everything would be okay, Vincent returned to his office. He pulled out a bottle of bourbon and poured himself a generous glass, then opened his laptop. If his wife was planning to leave him, she needed evidence of infidelity, grounds for divorce that would favor her in custody hearings. But Vincent Caldwell hadn't survived 3 tours in Afghanistan and built a multi-million-dollar company by being careless. His personal life was as secure as his business dealings, which meant Lydia was either bluffing or his phone buzzed. A text from his wife, working late at the club again. "Don't wait up. Hugs and kisses." Vincent checked his watch, 9:30 p.m. The country club closed at 9 o'clock. He opened his laptop and accessed the security system he'd installed throughout their house. Cameras that Lydia didn't know about, hidden in plain sight. Vincent fast-forwarded through the day's footage until he found what he was looking for. There, on his dining room table at 2:17 p.m., his wife was bent over while Ryan Hoffman took her from behind. They were laughing, their voices carrying clearly through the audio. "God, I can't wait until you divorce him," Ryan panted. "Vincent's so uptight, so controlling. You deserve better." "Soon," Lydia gasped. "My lawyer says with the prenup, I need to prove he's mentally unstable or abusive. Just a few more weeks of documenting his violent tendencies, and I'll have enough." Vincent's hand tightened around his glass. Violent tendencies? He'd never laid a finger on Lydia in anger, but she was building a case, manufacturing evidence. He continued watching, his expression growing colder with each passing minute. They discussed their plans in detail, how they'd frame him, how they'd take Sophie, how they'd split his assets. Ryan mentioned his debts, his need for Vincent's money. Lydia talked about selling the house, moving to California with Ryan and Sophie. When the footage ended, Vincent sat in silence. Then he smiled, an expression that would have terrified anyone who knew him during his military days. Lydia had made two crucial mistakes. First, she'd involved his daughter in her deception, using Sophie as a weapon. Second, she'd underestimated exactly what kind of man she was trying to destroy. Vincent Caldwell had killed men with his bare hands in defense of his country. He'd built an empire from nothing and crushed competitors who tried to take it from him. He'd never lost a war, and he wasn't about to start now. But this wouldn't be a quick, clean victory. Lydia and Ryan wanted to play games. Vincent would show them what games really looked like. Chapter 2. Gathering Intelligence. Vincent's security company, Caldwell Protective Services, specialized in corporate espionage and threat assessment. His client list included Fortune 500 companies, government contractors, and individuals who paid premium rates for discretion. What most people didn't know was that Vincent's team included former CIA operatives, ex-special forces, and hackers who could penetrate any system. The morning after Sophie's revelation, Vincent called his most trusted operative, Luis Morales, a former Army Ranger who'd served under Vincent in Afghanistan. Luis now ran the company's digital forensics division. "I need a full workup," Vincent said, sliding a folder across his desk. Ryan Hoffman and Lydia Caldwell. Everything: financial records, communications, medical history, parking tickets. "I want to know what they had for breakfast 3 years ago." Luis raised an eyebrow. Lydia's inclusion wasn't lost on him. "How deep?" "Ocean floor." "And Luis?" "This one's personal." "Understood, sir." 48 hours. 24. While Luis worked his magic, Vincent played the perfect husband. He brought Lydia flowers, took her to dinner at their favorite restaurant, and listened with apparent interest as she complained about her difficult tennis lessons with Ryan. All the while, he was cataloging her lies, noting the tells he'd somehow missed before. Lydia had always been beautiful, the kind of woman who turned heads at every social function. She'd been 22 when they met, fresh out of college and working as a gallery assistant. Vincent had been 35, recently discharged from the military and building his business. Their courtship had been intense, their marriage seemingly perfect. But watching her now, Vincent realized how little he'd actually known his wife. The way she touched her throat when she lied. How her voice pitched slightly higher when she was manipulating him. The practiced innocence in her eyes when she spoke about Ryan. She'd been playing a long game, probably from the beginning. Thursday morning, Luis delivered his report. Vincent read it alone in his office, his coffee growing cold as he absorbed the details. Ryan Hoffman was even more pathetic than Vincent had imagined. 31 years old, 2 failed businesses, $127,000 in gambling debts to some very unpleasant people in Atlantic City. His tennis instruction was barely covering his minimum payments. The man was desperate, exactly the kind of weakness Lydia would exploit. But it was the information about his wife that truly surprised Vincent. Lydia hadn't just stumbled into infidelity. She'd been planning this for over a year, systematically documenting everything Vincent did that could be construed as controlling or aggressive. She'd secretly consulted with 3 different divorce attorneys, shopping for the one who'd be most aggressive in pursuing his assets. Most damning of all, she'd been slowly poisoning Sophie against him. The report included transcripts of conversations Luis had recovered from Lydia's deleted text messages, discussions about preparing Sophie for the transition, and helping her understand that Daddy isn't a good man. Vincent closed the file and stared out his office window at the city skyline. He'd built this view through blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Every building below represented a client he'd protected, a threat he'd neutralized, a victory he'd earned. Nobody took what belonged to Vincent Caldwell. Nobody. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts, stopping at a name he hadn't called in years. Detective Patricia Grove, now retired but still well-connected in the justice system. Patricia owed Vincent several favors from cases where his company had provided crucial intelligence. "Patricia, it's Vincent Caldwell. I need to discuss a custody matter." Hypothetically speaking, of course. By the end of the conversation, Vincent had a clear understanding of how family court worked, what evidence carried the most weight, and which judges were most sympathetic to fathers who'd been victimized by manipulative spouses. Next, he called his business attorney, Marcus Webb. Marcus had been handling Vincent's legal affairs for 8 years and knew better than to ask unnecessary questions. "I need you to prepare something for me," Vincent said. "A comprehensive post-nuptial agreement. Very specific terms regarding adultery, false accusations, and parental alienation." "And Marcus? I need it to look like Lydia's idea." "That's complex." "What's the scenario?" "Marriage counseling. She'll suggest updating our legal arrangements as a sign of commitment. You'll draft something that appears favorable to her, but actually gives me every advantage if she violates the terms." "Vincent, if this is what I think it is, then I'm not asking for anything illegal. Just creative." That evening, Vincent sat across from Lydia at dinner, watching her perform her role as the loving wife. Sophie chattered about school between bites of pasta, oblivious to the war being waged around her. "I've been thinking," Lydia said, her voice carefully casual. "Maybe we should try couples counseling, just to make sure we're communicating properly." Vincent nodded thoughtfully. "That's a wonderful idea. I know exactly the person, Dr. Amanda Rivera. She specializes in high-conflict marriages." What Vincent didn't mention was that Dr. Rivera was also a former client who understood the value of discretion and detailed documentation. "And maybe," Vincent continued, "we should look at updating our legal arrangements too. Show our commitment to making this work." Lydia's eyes lit up, exactly as Vincent had predicted. "You mean like a post-nup?" "Something like that. I'll have Marcus draft something fair for both of us." As his wife smiled and agreed, Vincent felt the familiar calm that came before action. The pieces were falling into place. Soon, Lydia and Ryan would discover what happened when they tried to destroy a man who'd spent his life destroying threats. But first, he needed to secure Sophie's loyalty, not through manipulation like Lydia was attempting, but through truth. Chapter 3. Setting the Foundation. Friday evening, Vincent took Sophie to their favorite ice cream shop, just the two of them. As she attacked a sundae nearly as big as her head, he studied his daughter's face. She had his determination, but Lydia's delicate features, a combination that would serve her well in life if she learned the right lessons. "Sophie, do you remember what you told me about Mommy's drawing comment?" She nodded, suddenly serious. "She said you might not live with us anymore. How would you feel if that happened?" "Sad. Really, really sad." Sophie's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "Daddy, are you and Mommy going to get divorced like Taylor's parents?" Vincent chose his words carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, sweetheart, and sometimes they have to face consequences for those mistakes. But I want you to know something important. No matter what happens between Mommy and me, I will always be your father. I will always love you, and I will always fight to protect you. But what if Mommy says I can't see you? Then Mommy would be wrong, and Daddy is very good at proving when people are wrong." The next week passed in a carefully choreographed dance. Vincent attended marriage counseling sessions with Lydia, playing the role of the confused husband trying to save his marriage. Dr. Rivera documented every session, noting Lydia's subtle attempts to paint Vincent as controlling and volatile. Meanwhile, Vincent's team worked around the clock. Luis had placed surveillance on Ryan, documenting his gambling, his meetings with loan sharks, his increasingly desperate attempts to find money. Vincent's financial investigator traced every transaction in Lydia's accounts, uncovering her secret apartment rental in Manhattan, the love nest where she'd been meeting Ryan twice a week. But Vincent's most devastating discovery came from an unexpected source: Sophie's tablet. Children's devices were often overlooked in security assessments, but Vincent had installed monitoring software on all family electronics years ago. Reviewing Sophie's recent activity, he found something that made his blood run cold. Lydia had been recording their private conversations, father-daughter moments twisted into evidence of psychological manipulation. She'd edited clips to make Vincent's protective warnings sound threatening, his expressions of love sound possessive. Worse, she'd been coaching Sophie on what to say during the eventual custody evaluation. The recording showed Lydia teaching their 8-year-old daughter to lie about feeling scared of Vincent, to claim he had a bad temper, to say she'd rather live with Uncle Ryan. Vincent listened to these recordings alone in his office, his hands steady despite the rage coursing through him. Lydia wasn't just betraying him. She was psychologically abusing their daughter, turning Sophie into a weapon in her war against her own father. That night, Vincent made a decision that would have shocked anyone who thought they knew him. He wasn't going to expose Lydia's plan. He wasn't going to confront her or try to reason with her. He was going to let her proceed exactly as planned, and then destroy her so completely that she'd spend the rest of her life regretting the day she'd chosen to make Vincent Caldwell her enemy. The postnuptial agreement was ready by Tuesday. Marcus had outdone himself, creating a document that appeared to heavily favor Lydia, while actually containing clauses that would trigger devastating penalties if she violated its terms. The adultery clause alone would cost her everything: custody, assets, even spousal support. She'll sign it, Vincent told Marcus during their final review. She thinks she's smarter than me, and if she doesn't, she will. Lydia's greed always outweighs her caution. That evening, Vincent presented the agreement to Lydia during their romantic dinner at home. Sophie was at a sleepover, giving them privacy for their performance. Marcus outdid himself, Vincent said, pouring Lydia a glass of her favorite wine. This protects both of us, but honestly, it's probably more generous to you than I should be. Lydia read through the document, her lawyer's coaching evident in how she focused on specific sections. Vincent watched her eyes light up as she saw the asset distribution clauses, not realizing that they were conditional on her fidelity. "This seems fair," she said finally. "Very fair. I want you to feel secure, Lydia. I want you to know that I'm committed to our marriage, to our family." She signed with a flourish, even initialing the writer about mutual respect and honesty in all marital matters. Later, as Lydia slept beside him, Vincent stared at the ceiling and calculated timelines. By his estimation, Lydia would file for divorce within the next 2 weeks. She'd present her manufactured evidence, demand emergency custody, and try to freeze his assets. What she didn't know was that Vincent had already moved the majority of his wealth into overseas accounts and trust funds that were invisible to U.S. family courts. What remained in their joint accounts was enough to maintain appearances, but not enough to satisfy Ryan's debts or Lydia's expensive tastes. More importantly, Vincent had spent the last 2 weeks documenting everything: Lydia's infidelity, her coaching of Sophie, her fraudulent evidence gathering. He had recordings, photographs, financial records, and witness statements that would not only destroy her case, but potentially result in criminal charges. But Vincent wasn't planning to present this evidence defensively. He was going to use it as a weapon, striking at the perfect moment for maximum damage. The war was about to begin, and Lydia had no idea she'd already lost. Chapter 4. The Trap Springs. Lydia made her move on a Thursday morning, exactly 12 days after signing the postnuptial agreement. Vincent was in his office when Marcus called with the news that divorce papers had been filed. Lydia was seeking emergency custody, claiming Vincent had been increasingly erratic and potentially dangerous. "She's requesting a restraining order," Marcus reported. "Claims you threatened her and Sophie. She has recordings." "I'm sure she does," Vincent replied calmly. "When's the hearing?" "Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Judge Hamilton." "Perfect." Judge Hamilton was known for his no-nonsense approach and his particular disdain for parental alienation. More importantly, he was one of the judges Patricia Grove had recommended as sympathetic to fathers who'd been set up. Vincent spent the rest of Thursday making final preparations. He called his cleaning lady and casually mentioned that she shouldn't be surprised if Mrs. Caldwell moved out soon. He arranged for Sophie to stay with his sister Emma for the weekend, telling his daughter it was for a special adventure, while Mommy and Daddy worked out some grown-up problems. Most importantly, he activated the final phase of his surveillance operation. Ryan Hoffman was about to have a very bad day. At 3 a.m. Friday morning, Vincent's phone rang. It was Detective Grove. "Vincent, I thought you should know. There was an incident at Belmont Park last night. Ryan Hoffman was found beaten pretty severely in the parking lot. Apparently, he owed money to some unsavory characters." "That's terrible," Vincent said, not bothering to sound surprised. "Is he all right?" "He'll live, but he's in the hospital with a broken nose, 3 cracked ribs, and a severe concussion. Probably won't be conscious for a few days. What a shame. Right when Lydia needed him most. Vincent had made a single phone call 3 days earlier to a contact who specialized in debt collection. He'd simply mentioned that Ryan Hoffman might be more motivated to pay his debts if he understood the seriousness of his situation. Vincent never explicitly requested violence, but men like Tommy Castellano had their own ways of communicating with deadbeats. At 8 a.m., Vincent received a frantic call from Lydia. "Ryan's in the hospital," she sobbed. "Someone attacked him. He won't be able to testify today." "Testify about what?" Vincent asked innocently. The divorce hearing. "You know, about your behavior." "Lydia, what exactly was Ryan planning to testify about?" "He's your tennis instructor. What would he know about our marriage?" The pause stretched long enough for Vincent to count 5 heartbeats. He's a friend. He's seen how you treat me." "I see. Well, I hope he recovers quickly." These random attacks are terrible. By 1 p.m., Vincent was seated in family court with Marcus beside him. Lydia sat across the aisle with her attorney, Janet Morrison, a shark who specialized in high-asset divorces. Lydia looked confident despite Ryan's absence, clearly believing her manufactured evidence would be enough. Judge Hamilton was a thin man in his 60s with the demeanor of someone who'd seen every lie family court had to offer. He reviewed the preliminary filings with obvious skepticism. "Mrs. Caldwell, you're requesting emergency custody based on allegations of threatening behavior. I see you have recordings." Lydia's attorney stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We have documented evidence of Mr. Caldwell's increasingly controlling and volatile behavior toward both Mrs. Caldwell and their daughter." "I'd like to hear these recordings." Vincent watched Lydia's face as her attorney played the carefully edited clips. To someone unfamiliar with the context, Vincent's voice did sound harsh, especially when discussing consequences and protection. The clips were skillfully edited to remove context and emphasize perceived threats. "Mr. Caldwell," Judge Hamilton said, "do you recognize these recordings?" "I do, Your Honor. They're from conversations with my daughter about safety and appropriate behavior. However, they've been heavily edited to remove context. Do you have the full recordings?" Vincent smiled. "As a matter of fact, I do." Marcus stood and approached the bench with a thick folder. "Your Honor, Mr. Caldwell's security company maintains comprehensive audio and video surveillance of their home for security purposes. We have the complete, unedited versions of these conversations, plus additional material that provides crucial context." Judge Hamilton's eyebrows rose. "Additional material?" "Video evidence of Mrs. Caldwell coaching their daughter on what to say during custody evaluations, recordings of Mrs. Caldwell's affair with Mr. Ryan Hoffman, and documentation of Mrs. Caldwell's plan to manufacture evidence against Mr. Caldwell." The courtroom fell silent. Lydia's face went white, then red, then white again. "I'd like to see this evidence," Judge Hamilton said. For the next hour, Vincent's documentation played on the courtroom screens. The unedited recordings showed him as a patient, loving father warning his daughter about adult problems. The video of Lydia coaching Sophie was devastating. Watching an 8-year-old being taught to lie about her father brought visible disgust to Judge Hamilton's face. But the coup de grace was the footage of Lydia and Ryan in Vincent's dining room, discussing their plans in graphic detail. When it ended, Judge Hamilton removed his glasses and cleaned them slowly. "Mrs. Caldwell, do you care to explain what I just witnessed?" Lydia's attorney whispered frantically in her ear, but Lydia seemed incapable of speech. "Furthermore," Judge Hamilton continued, "I note that you signed a postnuptial agreement just 2 weeks ago that specifically addresses adultery and parental alienation. Were you aware of these clauses when you signed?" I didn't. The agreement isn't. The agreement appears quite clear, Mrs. Caldwell." "Mr. Caldwell, what are you seeking in these proceedings?" Vincent stood slowly. "Your Honor, I want full custody of my daughter, with supervised visitation for Mrs. Caldwell pending psychological evaluation. I want enforcement of our postnuptial agreement, including the penalty clauses for adultery and parental alienation. And I want Mrs. Caldwell investigated for filing false police reports and attempting to suborn perjury from a minor child. Judge Hamilton nodded grimly. Emergency custody is granted to Mr. Caldwell. Mrs. Caldwell, you'll have supervised visitation 2 hours per week until a full psychological evaluation is completed. I'm also referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. Lydia finally found her voice. This isn't over, Vincent. You can't destroy me like this. Vincent turned to look at his wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, with the same expression he'd worn while interrogating insurgents in Afghanistan. Lydia, he said quietly, this is just the beginning. Chapter 5, Psychological Warfare. The weekend after the hearing, Vincent picked up Sophie from his sister Emma's house. His daughter was unusually quiet during the drive home, her small hands fidgeting with her seatbelt. Daddy, she said finally, am I in trouble? Vincent pulled over at a park and turned to face her. Why would you be in trouble, sweetheart? Because of the things I said about you. The things Mommy taught me to say. Vincent's heart clenched, but he kept his voice steady. Sophie, you're 8 years old. It's not your job to understand grown-up problems or to take sides between Mommy and Daddy. You did what you thought you were supposed to do. But I knew it was wrong, Sophie whispered. You never scared me. You never hurt me. Mommy made me practice saying those things, and I knew they weren't true. Vincent unbuckled his seatbelt and pulled his daughter into his arms. You're not responsible for what grown-ups do, Sophie. Not ever. And I promise you, we're never going to put you in that position again. Is Mommy going to jail? I don't know. But whatever happens, you and I are going to be okay. We're going to build a life that's honest and safe and full of love. That Monday, Vincent received 2 calls that confirmed his strategy was working perfectly. The first was from Tommy Castellano. Your friend Ryan is awake, Tommy reported. Seems he's very motivated to discuss his debt situation. In fact, he's so motivated that he's agreed to leave town permanently. Funny thing, he doesn't seem interested in tennis instruction anymore. I'm glad he found clarity, Vincent replied. The second call was from Louise, who'd been monitoring Lydia's communications. She's falling apart, Louise reported. 37 calls to Ryan's phone, none answered. She tried to access their joint accounts and found most of the money gone. Her lawyer is demanding a $50,000 retainer that she can't pay. And her apartment? Lease expires next week. The landlord received an anonymous tip about unauthorized occupancy and noise complaints. He's not renewing. Vincent had spent years studying pressure points, physical, psychological, and financial. Lydia was discovering that her comfortable life had been built on foundations that only existed at Vincent's discretion. Wednesday brought the psychological evaluation report. Dr. Angela Reeves, the court-appointed psychologist, had spent 3 hours with Lydia and emerged with a damning assessment. Mrs. Caldwell exhibits significant narcissistic tendencies and a disturbing willingness to manipulate her child for personal gain, the report read. Her attempts to justify coaching Sophie to lie about her father suggest a fundamental inability to prioritize her child's welfare over her own desires. Continued unsupervised contact with a minor child is not recommended. That afternoon, Lydia appeared at Vincent's office without warning. His security guard called ahead, giving Vincent time to prepare for her arrival. She looked terrible. Her usual perfect appearance was disheveled, her designer clothes wrinkled, her makeup smeared. When she entered his office, she was barely holding herself together. Vincent, please, she said without preamble. Can we talk? Really talk? Of course. Have a seat. Lydia collapsed into the chair across from his desk. I know you're angry. I know I made mistakes. But this has gone too far. I lost the apartment. My lawyer dropped me. Ryan won't return my calls. Ryan's in the wind, Vincent said calmly. Apparently, his gambling debts caught up with him. He left town rather suddenly. You did this. I know you did this. Lydia, I'm a security consultant, not a miracle worker. I can't control other people's poor decisions. Please, she begged. I'll do anything. To stop this. Let me see Sophie. Let me keep the house. Vincent studied his wife's face. 3 weeks ago, she'd been confident in her ability to destroy him. Now she was begging for mercy she'd never intended to show him. You want to see Sophie? He asked. Yes. God, yes. She's my daughter. She's my daughter too. But you try to turn her into a weapon against me. You taught an 8-year-old child to lie about feeling afraid of her father. What kind of mother does that? Lydia's composure cracked completely. I was scared. I thought if I could make you look bad, I could take Sophie somewhere safe, somewhere you couldn't control us. Control you? Lydia, I gave you everything. I trusted you with my home, my child, my life. And you repaid that trust by planning to destroy me. I made a mistake. No, Vincent said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. A mistake is forgetting to pick up groceries. A mistake is being late for dinner. You orchestrated a campaign to alienate my daughter from me, to frame me as an abuser, to steal everything I've built. That wasn't a mistake, Lydia. That was war. What do you want? What will it take? Vincent stood and walked to his window. The city stretched out below him, his city, his domain. I want you to understand something, Lydia. You declared war on the wrong man. I spent my life dealing with people who threaten what I protect. I've never lost, and I've never shown mercy to anyone who tried to harm my family. Sophie is my family too. Sophie is an innocent child caught in the crossfire of your ambition. And I will protect her from you, just like I'd protect her from any other threat. Lydia was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Please, Vincent, I'm begging you. I'll sign anything, agree to anything. Just let me have some part of my life back. Vincent turned to face her. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to continue your supervised visitation with Sophie, 2 hours a week with a social worker present. You're going to move out of my house by Friday. You're going to attend psychological counseling for a minimum of 6 months. And you're going to accept that your decisions have consequences. What about money? I can't afford. According to the post-nuptial agreement you signed, your adultery triggers the penalty clauses. You forfeit any claim to marital assets, including spousal support. You'll receive exactly what you brought into this marriage. Nothing. That's not legal. No judge will. Judge Hamilton already enforced the agreement. You signed it willingly, with full legal representation. It's ironclad. Lydia stared at him, finally understanding the scope of what he'd done. You planned this. All of it. The agreement, the evidence, everything. I defended myself and my daughter against someone who tried to destroy us. If you want to call that planning, go ahead. This isn't over. Vincent smiled, the same cold expression that had terrified enemy combatants in Afghanistan. Yes, Lydia, it is. Chapter 6, Tightening the Noose. Friday arrived with autumn rain that turned the October afternoon gray and cold. Vincent watched from his office window as Lydia's BMW pulled into the driveway of what had been their home for 8 years. He'd given her until 6 p.m. to collect her personal belongings and leave her keys. Sophie was at school, spared from witnessing her mother's final defeat. Vincent had arranged for his daughter to stay with Emma again this weekend while he completed the transition. At 5:47 p.m., Lydia's car disappeared down the street for the last time. Louise appeared in Vincent's doorway with a tablet in hand. Final security sweep is complete. She took clothes, jewelry, and some photographs. Left everything else, including the items that legally belonged to her family. Interesting choice, Vincent mused. Lydia's grandmother's china, her mother's paintings, photo albums spanning Sophie's entire life, all abandoned in her haste to escape. There's more, Louise continued. Her mother called 3 times while she was packing. Lydia never answered. Vincent wasn't surprised. Lydia's parents had always disapproved of her marriage to Vincent, considering him beneath their social status. But they tolerated him for the financial security he provided their daughter. Now that security was gone, and Lydia would have to face their disappointment along with everything else. Monday brought news that both satisfied and concerned Vincent. Detective Grove called with an update on the district attorney's investigation. They're moving forward with charges, she reported. Filing false reports, attempted perjury, and child endangerment. The evidence you provided makes it an easy case. Timeline: arrest warrant should be issued within the week. Vincent, are you sure you want to go this far? She's still Sophie's mother. Vincent stared at Sophie's latest drawing, hanging in the place of honor on his office wall. This one showed just the two of them holding hands in front of a house with a rainbow overhead. No apology written in the corner this time. Patricia, What kind of message does it send to Sophie if I let someone who tried to psychologically abuse her face no consequences? What kind of man would I be if I allowed anyone, to threaten my daughter's well-being without responding? Understand. Just make sure you can live with this. I've lived with worse. That evening, Vincent picked up Sophie from school and took her to their favorite restaurant. Over dinner, he explained that Mommy wouldn't be living with them anymore, but that they'd still see each other during special visits. "Are you sad, Daddy?" Sophie asked, studying his face with 8-year-old intensity. "I'm sad that things happened the way they did," Vincent said honestly. "But I'm not sad that it's just you and me now. We're going to have great adventures together. Can we get a dog?" Vincent laughed, the first genuine laugh he'd had in weeks. "We can definitely get a dog." Wednesday brought the news Vincent had been expecting. Luis burst into his office with unusual excitement. "She's been arrested," Luis announced. "Picked her up at her mother's house in Connecticut." The parents weren't pleased. Vincent felt a moment of satisfaction, followed immediately by concern for Sophie. His daughter would hear about this, probably at school, where children always knew more than adults expected. "Luis, I want you to prepare a security assessment for Sophie's school. If any reporters or social workers try to approach her, I want to know immediately." "Already done. I've also reached out to that private school you mentioned, Riverside Academy. They're very experienced with high-profile custody situations." Vincent nodded. Riverside was expensive, exclusive, and discreet. Sophie would get an excellent education, surrounded by children whose families understood the value of privacy. Thursday evening brought an unexpected visitor. Vincent was helping Sophie with homework when his security system announced a car in the driveway. The cameras showed a familiar face, Dr. Amanda Rivera, the marriage counselor who documented Lydia's lies. "Dr. Rivera," Vincent said, opening the door. "This is unexpected. Mr. Caldwell, I hope you don't mind the intrusion. I want to speak with you about Sophie's well-being during this transition." They spoke in Vincent's study while Sophie finished her homework in the kitchen. Dr. Rivera's concerns were professional but pointed. "Vincent, I've been reviewing my sessions with you and Lydia. Your wife clearly had significant psychological issues, and your response has been comprehensive. But I'm concerned about Sophie's long-term emotional health." "In what way?" "Children need stability and predictability. You've removed every trace of her mother from her life very quickly. That can be traumatic, even when the mother was problematic." Vincent considered this. In his focus on protecting Sophie from Lydia's manipulation, had he overcorrected? "What do you recommend?" "Therapy for Sophie, obviously, but also consider allowing her to keep some connection to positive memories of her mother. Not contact given the legal situation, but perhaps some photographs, some mementos. Children need to process these losses, not have them erased." That night, after Sophie was asleep, Vincent retrieved the photo albums Lydia had abandoned. He spent an hour looking through pictures of birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family vacations. In many of them, Lydia looked genuinely happy, genuinely loving towards Sophie. The woman who'd tried to destroy him had also been the woman who'd sung lullabies to their daughter, who'd bandaged scraped knees and read bedtime stories. Sophie deserved to remember that version of her mother, even if that woman was gone. Vincent selected several dozen photographs and had them professionally mounted in a new album. On the first page, he wrote, "Memories of Mommy and Sophie's happy times." Friday afternoon, Lydia's bail hearing made the local news. Vincent watched the coverage with grim satisfaction as reporters described the charges against the prominent socialite. Lydia's arrest photo showed her disheveled and desperate, a far cry from the confident woman who'd signed divorce papers 3 weeks earlier. But Vincent's satisfaction was tempered by something unexpected, Sophie's reaction. His daughter had been unusually quiet since seeing the news coverage at a friend's house. That evening, she approached him with tears in her eyes. "Daddy, is Mommy in jail because of me?" Vincent knelt down and pulled Sophie into his arms. "No, sweetheart. Mommy is facing consequences for choices she made, adult choices that had nothing to do with you. But if I hadn't told you about the drawing, Sophie, listen to me. You told me the truth, and truth is always the right choice. What happened to Mommy happened because of what Mommy did, not because you were honest with your father. As Vincent comforted his daughter, he realized that his war with Lydia had produced unexpected casualties. Sophie would grow up knowing her mother was a convicted criminal. She'd have to explain to friends why she only saw her mother during supervised visits. She'd carry the psychological scars of being caught between her parents' conflict. Vincent had won the war, but victory came with a price that would last long after Lydia served her sentence. Chapter 7. The Final Gambit. 3 months after Lydia's arrest, Vincent received a call that changed everything. Sophie was at Riverside Academy, thriving in her new environment, when Janet Morrison, Lydia's former attorney, requested a meeting. "I know this is unusual," Morrison said over the phone, "but I think we need to discuss your wife's situation. There's been a development." They met at Morrison's office downtown, a sleek space designed to intimidate opposing counsel. But Morrison seemed subdued, almost apologetic. "Vincent, I need to be direct with you. Lydia's psychological evaluation in prison has revealed some troubling information. She's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and severe narcissistic traits. The doctors believe she was experiencing a psychotic break during the period when she was planning the divorce." Vincent said nothing, waiting for the real reason for this meeting. "The thing is," Morrison continued, "the prosecution is considering a plea deal. Psychiatric treatment instead of prison time. But there's a condition. They want assurance that Sophie won't be in danger if Lydia returns to society." "Sophie is never going to be in danger from her mother again," Vincent said flatly. "I believe you. But Vincent, Lydia's parents are asking for mercy. They want to work out some kind of arrangement where she can eventually rebuild a relationship with Sophie." Vincent leaned back in his chair. "What kind of arrangement?" "They're prepared to establish a trust fund for Sophie's education and future needs. $2 million, with the stipulation that Lydia be allowed supervised visitation rights that could potentially expand as she completes treatment." $2 million. Vincent didn't need the money, but it would secure Sophie's future completely. It was also a tacit admission from Lydia's family that their daughter had been wrong, that Vincent had been the victim. "There's something else," Morrison added. "Lydia wants to write Sophie a letter. She wants to apologize, to try to explain why she did what she did. She's not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to give Sophie closure." Vincent considered this. Dr. Rivera had emphasized the importance of helping Sophie process her feelings about her mother. A letter might provide that opportunity. "I'll read the letter first," Vincent said finally. "If it's appropriate, I'll share it with Sophie. As for the visitation, we'll see how she does in treatment." That evening, Vincent sat in his study with Lydia's letter. Her handwriting was shaky, her words carefully chosen. "My dear Sophie, Daddy has probably told you that I made some very bad choices, and he's right. I hurt people I love, including you, and I'm very sorry for that. I want you to know that none of what happened was your fault. You are a beautiful, smart, wonderful little girl, and you deserve so much better than what I put you through. I'm sick, Sophie. Not the kind of sick where you have a fever, but the kind of sick that makes your thoughts confused and scary. I'm getting help for that sickness, and I hope someday I can be the mother you deserve. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. I always will, and I'm proud that you have Daddy to take care of you. He's a good man, and he loves you very much. Love always, Mommy." Vincent read the letter twice, then set it aside. It was honest, age-appropriate, and free of manipulation. More importantly, it acknowledged Vincent's role as Sophie's protector rather than undermining it. The next day, Vincent had a long conversation with Dr. Rivera about how to present the letter to Sophie. They decided to read it together during one of Sophie's therapy sessions, giving her a safe space to process her emotions. Sophie's reaction surprised Vincent. After Dr. Rivera finished reading the letter, his daughter was quiet for a long time. Then she looked up at Vincent with those serious blue eyes. "Daddy, can I write her back? What would you want to say? That I hope she gets better, and that I love her too, but I'm happy living with you." 6 months later, Vincent stood in a courtroom for Lydia's sentencing hearing. She'd pleaded guilty to all charges in exchange for a sentence of 1 year in a psychiatric facility, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. Lydia looked different, thinner, older, but somehow more present than she'd been during their marriage. When Judge Hamilton asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, she stood and turned toward Vincent. "Your Honor, I'd like to apologize to my former husband and my daughter. I put them through hell because of my own mental illness and selfishness. Mr. Caldwell was right to protect Sophie from me, and I hope someday I can earn back a small part of their trust." Vincent said nothing, but he noticed that Lydia no longer referred to herself as Sophie's mother. She'd accepted that her actions had cost her that title. After the hearing, Lydia's parents approached Vincent in the hallway. Margaret Ashton looked older than her 68 years, worn down by her daughter's disgrace and the family's social humiliation. "Vincent," she said quietly, "we want to thank you for agreeing to the trust fund arrangement and for allowing Sophie to correspond with Lydia. Sophie deserves financial security," Vincent replied, "and she deserves the chance to understand her mother's illness without being victimized by it." "You could have destroyed us all," Margaret continued. "Our reputation, our business connections, everything. Instead, you've been remarkably restrained." Vincent looked at this woman who'd once considered him unworthy of her daughter. "Mrs. Ashton, I'm not interested in destroying innocent people. I protect what matters to me, and I eliminate threats to my family. You and your husband were never threats." As Vincent walked to his car, he reflected on the past year. He'd won completely, gained custody of Sophie, destroyed Lydia's plans, secured their financial future, and even managed to create a path for Sophie to have some relationship with her mother if she chose. But victory felt different than he'd expected. The man who'd once eliminated enemies without hesitation had found himself showing mercy to a woman who'd tried to destroy him. Perhaps Sophie's influence was making him softer. Or perhaps true strength lay in knowing when to show restraint. Either way, Vincent Caldwell had proven once again that he was not a man to be crossed. The story would become legend in their social circles, a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating a quiet man with dangerous skills. Chapter 8: New Foundations. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, Vincent stood in the kitchen of his new home, watching Sophie play with their German Shepherd puppy, Rex, in the backyard. They'd moved 6 months ago, leaving a house that held too many memories of deception and betrayal. This new place was different, smaller but warmer, chosen by Sophie after they'd looked at dozens of properties together. It had a bigger yard for Rex, a swimming pool, and most importantly, no shadows of the past. Sophie was 10 now, taller and more confident. The timid little girl who'd apologized through her drawings had grown into a thoughtful young woman who spoke her mind and trusted her instincts. Her weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Rivera had helped her process the trauma of her parents' divorce, and she seemed genuinely happy. The phone rang, interrupting Vincent's morning coffee. It was Dr. Rivera. "Vincent, I wanted to discuss Sophie's latest evaluation. She's doing remarkably well, better than most children who've experienced similar trauma. She's resilient," Vincent said, watching his daughter teach Rex to sit. "She is. But Vincent, she's also asked some pointed questions about her mother lately. She wants to know if she can visit Lydia." Vincent felt his chest tighten. Lydia had been released from psychiatric care 8 months ago and was living in a supervised halfway house in Connecticut. She completed her treatment program, held down a job at her parents' gallery, and adhered strictly to her probation requirements. More importantly, her monthly letters to Sophie had shown genuine growth. Gone was the manipulative woman who tried to turn their daughter into a weapon. In her place was someone who seemed to understand the harm she'd caused and was genuinely committed to change. "What's your professional opinion?" Vincent asked. "I think it could be beneficial for Sophie. She needs to see her mother as a real person, not just a villain from her childhood, but it would have to be carefully supervised and controlled." That evening, Vincent sat down with Sophie after dinner. She was reading a book about horses, her latest obsession, while Rex slept at her feet. "Sophie, Dr. Rivera says you've been asking about visiting Mommy." She looked up from her book, her expression serious. "I've been thinking about her. I know she did bad things, but I still love her. Is that wrong?" Vincent's heart ached for his daughter's confusion. "It's not wrong to love someone even when they've hurt you, sweetheart. Love doesn't just disappear because someone makes mistakes. Do you still love her? The question caught Vincent off guard. Did he still love Lydia? The woman who'd betrayed him was gone, replaced by someone who seemed genuinely remorseful. But love? That had died the moment he'd discovered her deception. I care about her as your mother, he said carefully. I want her to be healthy and safe because that's what's best for you. But the love I had for her as my wife, that's gone, Sophie. Some things can't be repaired. Sophie nodded slowly. I understand, but I think I'd like to see her. Just to talk. The visit was arranged for the following Saturday at the halfway house. Vincent drove Sophie to Connecticut, both of them nervous for different reasons. The facility was clean but institutional, designed to ease former patients back into society. Lydia was waiting in the visitor's room, and Vincent was struck by how much she'd changed. Gone was the polished socialite he'd married. This woman wore simple clothes, minimal makeup, and carried herself with a humility he'd never seen before. Sophie, Lydia said softly, tears immediately filling her eyes. You've grown so much. Hi, Mommy, Sophie replied, suddenly shy. Vincent watched carefully as mother and daughter awkwardly hugged. A social worker supervised from across the room, taking notes on their interaction. I brought you something, Sophie said, pulling a drawing from her backpack. It showed a woman with long brown hair standing next to a rainbow. At the bottom, Sophie had written, "Get well soon, Mommy." Lydia held the drawing like it was made of glass. It's beautiful, sweetheart. I'm going to hang it in my room. They talked for an hour about safe topics, Sophie's school, her friends, Rex the dog. Lydia asked careful questions and listened intently to every answer. She never tried to criticize Vincent or their new life, never attempted to guilt Sophie about the time they'd lost. Most importantly, she never asked Sophie to keep secrets or pass along messages to Vincent. As they prepared to leave, Lydia turned to Vincent. Thank you for bringing her. I know how difficult this must be for you. Sophie needed this, Vincent replied. She needs to understand who you are now, not just who you were. I'll never be able to undo the damage I caused, but I'm grateful for any chance to be part of her life, even if it's just visits like this. On the drive home, Sophie was unusually quiet. Finally, she spoke. Daddy, she seems different. How so? Sadder, but also nicer, like she really listened to me instead of just waiting for her turn to talk. Vincent nodded. People can change, Sophie. It doesn't excuse what they did wrong, but sometimes they can become better versions of themselves. Are you still angry at her? Vincent considered this question seriously. Was he still angry? The rage that had driven him to destroy Lydia's life had cooled over the years. What remained was a kind of cold pragmatism. He'd do whatever was necessary to protect Sophie, but he no longer felt the need to actively punish Lydia. I'm not angry anymore, he said finally, but I'm also not going to forget what happened. Trust has to be earned back slowly, and some things can never be completely forgiven. I think I understand. That night, Vincent sat in his study reviewing security reports from his company. Business was booming. His reputation for protecting clients from threats had only grown after word spread about how he'd handled his own domestic crisis. His phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Rivera. Sophie seems very positive about today's visit. I think monthly visits would be beneficial if you're comfortable with that. Vincent typed back, we'll try monthly visits for 6 months and reassess. As he set down his phone, Vincent realized something had shifted inside him. For 2 years, he'd been focused on protecting Sophie from her mother. Now, he was facilitating their relationship because Sophie needed it. The change surprised him. The man who'd once sworn never to forgive or forget was learning that true strength sometimes meant knowing when to show mercy. Not for the benefit of those who'd wronged him, but for the sake of the innocent people caught in the aftermath. Sophie needed her mother, and Vincent loved Sophie more than he hated Lydia. In the end, that love would guide his decisions, just as it always had. Chapter 9. Unbreakable Bonds. 5 years had passed since that first drawing that changed everything. Sophie was now 13, tall for her age with Vincent's determined jaw and his blue eyes that seemed to see everything. She was an honor student at Riverside Academy, captain of the equestrian team, and showed the same analytical mind that had made her father successful. Vincent watched from the fence as Sophie guided her horse, Aurora, through a complex jumping course. Her movements were precise, confident. She'd inherited his ability to remain calm under pressure. "She's remarkable," said a voice behind him. Vincent turned to see Dr. Rivera approaching, her hair now showing more gray, but her eyes as sharp as ever. "Amanda, what brings you to Sophie's practice? I wanted to talk to you about something. Sophie's been seeing me for 5 years now, and I think it's time to consider whether she still needs regular therapy." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "You're firing your patient?" "I'm graduating her. Sophie has processed her trauma remarkably well. She has a healthy relationship with both parents, she's academically and socially successful, and she's developed excellent coping mechanisms. Continued therapy might actually be counterproductive at this point." They watched Sophie complete her course flawlessly, then trot Aurora over to the fence where they stood. "Dad, did you see that last jump?" Aurora barely touched the rail. "I saw. You two make a good team." Sophie dismounted and began untacking Aurora. "Dr. Rivera, are you here to see me?" "Actually, I'm here to tell you that I think our regular sessions can come to an end. You've done all the hard work of healing, Sophie. You don't need me anymore." Sophie paused in loosening Aurora's girth. "Because I'm fixed?" "Because you were never broken," Dr. Rivera replied gently. "You were hurt, and you healed. That's what healthy people do." Later that evening, Vincent and Sophie sat on their back porch watching the sunset. Rex, now 5 years old and perfectly trained, lay at Sophie's feet. These quiet moments had become precious to Vincent. Time when they could simply exist together without the weight of the past pressing down on them. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever regret what you did to Mom? I mean, the way you destroyed her life?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment. This conversation had been inevitable, and he'd been preparing for it for years. "Sophie, I did what I thought was necessary to protect you. Your mother was trying to turn you against me and take you away. I couldn't let that happen. But you could have just gotten divorced. You didn't have to send her to prison. Your mother committed crimes, Sophie. She filed false police reports, tried to coach you to lie under oath, and attempted to defraud me financially. The prison sentence was a consequence of her choices, not my revenge." Sophie pulled her knees up to her chest. "I know. I understand that logically. But sometimes I wonder, if you could do it over again, would you handle it differently?" Vincent studied his daughter's face. She was asking whether he was the kind of man who destroyed people unnecessarily, whether his love for her had made him cruel. "If your mother had simply asked for a divorce, we could have worked out custody arrangements like civilized adults. If she'd been honest about her feelings about Ryan, about wanting a different life, I would have been hurt, but I would have tried to do what was best for you. But she didn't do that. No, she declared war on me, Sophie. She tried to take you away using lies and manipulation. And once someone declares war on Vincent Caldwell, he let the sentence hang in the air. You destroy them completely," Sophie finished. "I protect what matters to me. Always. Without exception." Sophie was quiet for several minutes, processing this. "The kids at school sometimes talk about you. They say you're scary, that their parents warn them not to cross the Caldwell family." Vincent felt a chill. "And what do you think about that?" "I think you're the safest person I know to love, because you do anything to protect the people you care about. But I also think you're the most dangerous person to betray." Her words were spoken matter-of-factly, without fear or judgment. Sophie understood exactly who her father was and had made peace with it. "Does that frighten you?" Vincent asked. "No, it makes me feel safe. But Dad, I also think Mom has suffered enough. She lost everything. Her home, her reputation, her daughter. She's been in therapy for 6 years now. She works at Grandpa's gallery and lives in a tiny apartment. Don't you think she's paid for what she did?" Vincent considered this. Lydia's monthly visits with Sophie had continued for 3 years now. She was punctual, respectful, and never overstepped boundaries. She asked about Sophie's life, but never pried. She sent appropriate birthday and Christmas gifts. She'd become harmless. "What are you asking, Sophie? I'd like to spend some real time with her. Maybe a weekend visit. I know it would have to be supervised, but I think I'm old enough now to handle it." Vincent's first instinct was to refuse. But as he looked at Sophie, 13 years old and wise beyond her years, he realized she wasn't asking out of childish sentimentality. She was making a mature decision about her relationship with her mother. "I'll consider it," he said finally. "Really? Really? But Sophie, you need to understand something. If your mother ever tries to manipulate you again, ever tries to turn you against me, or make you keep secrets, that relationship ends permanently. I won't give her a third chance to hurt you. I understand. And Dad, I would tell you if she did anything like that. I learned my lesson about keeping secrets." The weekend visit was arranged for the following month. Lydia would take Sophie to her parents' house in Connecticut for Saturday and Sunday, with a social worker checking in twice daily. Vincent drove Sophie to the meeting point, a neutral location where Lydia was waiting with her car. His ex-wife looked nervous but hopeful as Sophie hugged her goodbye. "Vincent," Lydia said quietly, "thank you for trusting me with this." "I'm not trusting you, Lydia. I'm trusting Sophie. Don't make me regret it." That weekend was the longest 48 hours of Vincent's life. He paced his house, cleaned his guns, reorganized his office, and generally drove himself crazy with worry. When Sophie finally called Sunday evening to say she was ready to come home, Vincent was in his car within minutes. "How was it?" he asked as they drove home. "Good. Different. We went to the museum, and Grandma made her famous pot roast. Mom and I talked a lot about everything. She told me about her mental illness, about how it made her think and feel. She explained why she did what she did without making excuses for it. And I think I understand her better now. She's still my mom, but she's also just a person who made terrible mistakes and is trying to be better." Vincent nodded. "That's a very mature way to look at it. Dad, she asked me to tell you something. She wanted me to say that she's grateful for the way you've handled everything. She knows she doesn't deserve your mercy, but she's grateful for it anyway." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that you're not merciful. You're practical, and that it's practical for me to have a relationship with my mother as long as she doesn't threaten our family." Vincent smiled despite himself. Sophie had inherited more than his eyes and determination. She'd inherited his ability to see situations clearly, without sentiment clouding her judgment. That night, as Vincent tucked Sophie into bed, a ritual they'd maintained despite her protests that she was too old, she looked up at him with those serious blue eyes. "Dad, I want you to know something. I love Mom, and I'm glad I can have a relationship with her. But you're my hero. You're the one who protected me when I needed protection. You're the one who taught me to be strong and honest and brave. You're the parent I want to be like when I grow up." Vincent felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Sophie, you're already everything I could have hoped for in a daughter. You're kind without being weak, strong without being cruel, and smart without being arrogant. You're better than I ever was. I learned from the best." As Vincent turned off Sophie's light and closed her door, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. 8 years ago, a child's drawing had revealed a betrayal that nearly destroyed his family. His response had been swift, brutal, and complete, exactly what the situation required. But the real victory wasn't in destroying Lydia or Ryan or anyone else who'd threatened him. The real victory was the young woman sleeping safely in the room behind him, strong, confident, and completely secure in her father's love. Vincent Caldwell had spent his life protecting people and eliminating threats. But his greatest achievement would always be raising a daughter who understood the difference between strength and cruelty, between justice and revenge. Sophie would never need anyone to fight her battles for her. She would never be anyone's victim, and she would never, ever underestimate the power of a quiet man who loved his family more than his own life. The war was over. Love had won. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Impossible Call. Oscar Buckley was elbow deep in prep work for the evening rush when his phone buzzed against the stainless steel counter. The screen showed an unknown number with a local area code. He almost ignored it. Telemarketers had become relentless lately, but something made him wipe his hands on his apron and answer. "This is Oscar, Mr. Buckley." A woman's voice, professional but strained. "This is Principal Judy Newton from Riverside Elementary. We have a situation that requires your immediate presence." Oscar frowned, glancing around his restaurant kitchen. "I think you have the wrong person. I don't have any kids." A pause. "Sir, please. Your daughter is refusing to leave her classroom and is becoming increasingly distressed. She's asked for you specifically." "Ma'am, I'm telling you, I don't have a daughter. I don't have any children." The principal's voice dropped lower, almost pleading. "Mr. Buckley, I understand this is unusual, but the child is quite insistent, and frankly, we're concerned. Would you be willing to come down here? Just to clear this up?" Oscar felt a cold prickle at the base of his neck. Something was off. Very off. "What's the child's name?" "Emily. Emily Simpson." The surname meant nothing to him. "How old?" 9 years old. "Sir, please. Just come." Against his better judgment, Oscar found himself agreeing. He stripped off his apron and called out to his sous chef. "Ramon, you've got the kitchen." "Emergency." Ramon Landry looked up from his station, surprised. In 5 years of working together, Oscar had never left during prep. "Everything okay, boss?" "I don't know yet." The drive to Riverside Elementary took 15 minutes through afternoon traffic. Oscar's mind raced through possibilities. A mistake. Had to be. Some kid with an absent father. Maybe she'd seen him somewhere and fixated. Or perhaps this was some elaborate scam. He'd been scammed before. Well, not scammed exactly. Betrayed was more accurate. 9 years ago, his ex-wife Brandy had cleaned out their joint account and disappeared while he was visiting his dying mother in hospice. By the time he'd returned, she was gone, the money was gone, and divorce papers arrived 3 weeks later. He'd rebuilt his life from scratch, turned his passion for cooking into Buckley's Bistro, and sworn off trusting people too easily. The school's front office felt too bright, too cheerful with its crayon artwork and motivational posters. Principal Newton was a tired-looking woman in her 50s who stood immediately when he entered. "Mr. Buckley, thank you for coming." She gestured toward her office. "She's in there with Mrs. McPherson, our school counselor. Look, I really think there's been a mistake. Please, just you'll see." Principal Newton opened the door. Inside, a young girl sat in a chair that seemed too big for her small frame. She had dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail, and her eyes were red from crying. Next to her sat a woman with a gentle face, clearly the counselor, who looked up with poorly concealed confusion. The moment the girl saw Oscar, she jumped from her chair. "Dad!" Oscar stood frozen in the doorway. The word hit him like a physical blow. The girl, Emily, ran toward him but stopped a few feet away, suddenly uncertain. Up close, Oscar could see her face more clearly. His stomach twisted. She had his eyes, that same unusual gray-green color that ran in the Buckley family. His brother Louis had them. His late mother had them. Oscar's voice came out hoarse. "I don't understand." Emily's lower lip trembled. "Mom said you didn't want me. She said you left before I was born and never wanted to see me. But I found your picture in her drawer, and I looked you up, and I wanted to meet you. Just once." Principal Newton cleared her throat. "Mr. Buckley, perhaps we should all sit down." Oscar couldn't move. His mind was calculating, counting back. 9 years old. That would mean his last months with Brandy had been strained. She'd been distant, picking fights, staying out late. He'd chalked it up to stress. They'd both been working hard, trying to save money. Then his mother's cancer diagnosis came, and he'd spent 3 weeks at her bedside 2 states away. When he returned, Brandy was gone. But if she'd been pregnant, "I need to make a call," Oscar said abruptly. He stepped back into the hallway, pulled out his phone, and dialed his brother. Louis answered on the second ring. "Hey, what's up?" "Louis, I need you to think back. 9, almost 10 years ago, right before Brandy left. Did she seem different? Was there anything unusual? Whoa, where is this coming from? Why are you asking about that which now? Just answer the question." Louis was quiet for a moment. Yeah, she was acting weird. Snappy. I remember she wasn't drinking at your 4th of July barbecue that year, which was unusual for her, and she kept getting sick in the mornings. I figured it was a flu or something." "What?" Oscar closed his eyes. I'm at an elementary school. There's a 9-year-old girl in there who has my eyes, Lewis. She says she's my daughter. The silence on the other end lasted several heartbeats. Holy shit. Yeah. You want me to come down there? Not yet. I need to figure out what the hell is going on first. Oscar exhaled slowly. But I might need your help soon. He hung up and stood in the hallway, steadying himself. Then he walked back into the office. Emily was still standing where he'd left her, watching him with desperate hope in those familiar eyes. Okay, Oscar said quietly. Let's talk. Chapter 2. Unraveling the Past. Oscar sat across from Emily in Principal Newton's office, while Holly McPherson, the counselor, observed. The principal had discreetly stepped out to give them privacy. Tell me about your mom, Oscar began, keeping his voice gentle. Emily fidgeted with the hem of her school uniform. Her name is Brandy. Brandy Simpson now. She married Wayne 3 years ago. Simpson. That's why the girl had that last name. And what does your mom do? She works at a medical billing company. Wayne does something with insurance. Emily's face darkened when she mentioned Wayne. I don't like him very much. He's mean when mom's not around. Oscar felt a protective anger flare, but pushed it down. What made you want to find me, Emily? The girl pulled a crumpled photograph from her backpack. It showed a much younger Oscar, maybe 28 or 29, grinning at the camera at some restaurant. He remembered that day vaguely. It had been taken at the first restaurant where he'd worked as a head chef. I found this in Mom's jewelry box last month. There was a name written on the back. Oscar Buckley, the one who got away. Emily looked up at him. I know Mom told me you didn't want me, but I thought maybe she was wrong. Maybe you didn't know about me. So I look you up online. You have a restaurant. You won awards. You looked nice. Oscar's chest tightened. So you came to this school hoping to find me? Emily, this isn't even your school, is it? She shook her head. My school is across town. But I took the bus here because your restaurant is only 10 blocks away. I thought if I caused a scene and said you were my dad, they'd have to call you. The kid was smart, resourceful, and clearly desperate. Does your mom know you're here? Emily's eyes widened with panic. No, please don't tell her. She'll be so angry. Wayne will. She stopped abruptly. Wayne will what? Nothing. Just please. Holly McPherson leaned forward. Mr. Buckley, I think we need to contact Emily's mother regardless. She must be worried sick. Her school probably already called. Emily muttered. She's going to kill me. Oscar made a decision. I'll take you home. But first, we're going to talk to your mother together. The drive to Emily's house was quiet. She directed him through neighborhoods that grew progressively shabbier until they reached a tired-looking apartment complex. Oscar parked and looked at the girl. Whatever happens in there, I want you to know something. If you really are my daughter, and we're going to find out for sure, then your mom was wrong. I would have wanted you. I would have wanted to know you. Okay. Emily nodded, blinking back tears. The apartment was on the 3rd floor. Emily's knock was barely audible, but the door flew open almost immediately. And there was Brandy Kemp. She'd aged, Oscar noted distantly. Her once glossy dark hair was now brittle from too much bleach, her face harder than he remembered. But he recognized her immediately, and from the way her face went white, she recognized him too. What the fuck, she breathed. Hello, Brandy. Interesting situation we have here. A man appeared behind her, tall, running to fat, with a weak chin and calculating eyes. This had to be Wayne Simpson. Who the hell is this? Wayne, go back inside. Brandy's voice was sharp. Is this about Emily? The school called saying she pulled some stunt. I said go inside. But Wayne's eyes had fixed on Oscar, and something flickered across his face. Recognition? No, something else. Calculation. You're Oscar Buckley, Wayne said slowly. The restaurant guy. That's right. Wayne, shut up. Brandy grabbed his arm, but he shook her off. We should invite him in. Talk this through like adults. Wayne's smile didn't reach his eyes. After all, if Emily here is claiming he's her father, there's a lot to discuss. Legal stuff, responsibilities, child support. And there it was. Oscar saw the whole picture suddenly, clearly. This wasn't Emily's desperate plan. It was Brandy and Wayne's. Emily had been used as bait. Child support, Oscar repeated flatly. For a child I didn't know existed. How convenient that you've decided to tell me now, after 9 years. Brandy found her voice. You should have tried harder to find me. You served me divorce papers and disappeared. You made it very clear you wanted nothing to do with me. That doesn't absolve you of responsibility to your daughter. Wayne stepped forward, puffing himself up. 9 years of missed payments. That adds up. Plus, Emily needs stability. Private school, medical care, therapy for the abandonment issues. Oscar felt a cold rage building, but he kept his face neutral. I want a DNA test. Of course, Wayne said smoothly. We have no problem with that. In fact, we insist on it. For Emily's sake, we need absolute certainty. Something about his eagerness set off alarm bells. Wayne wanted the DNA test. Why? Unless. I'll arrange it through my lawyer, Oscar said. Independent facility. Chain of custody documentation. We do this by the book. Brandy's expression flickered. Fear? Anger? Fine. Whatever. But until then, you need to leave Emily alone. She's confused enough. Oscar looked at Emily, who stood small and quiet in the hallway. Emily, do you want me to leave? Before she could answer, Wayne pulled her inside roughly. The kid wants stability, not more chaos. We'll be in touch through lawyers. The door slammed in Oscar's face. Oscar stood in the dingy hallway for a long moment, thinking. Then he pulled out his phone and called his lawyer, Raymond Hand. Raymond, I need you to clear your schedule. I've got a situation. The next morning, Oscar sat in Raymond Hand's downtown office, a sleek space that spoke of expensive success. Raymond was a shark in a suit. Harvard Law, 20 years of courtroom victories, and Oscar's friend since college. If anyone could navigate this minefield, it was him. Let me make sure I have this right, Raymond said, tapping his pen against his legal pad. Your ex-wife, who screwed you over 9 years ago, suddenly surfaces with a child she claims is yours. She's now married to a guy who's already talking about child support and back payments. And the kid herself doesn't seem to know this was part of a plan. That's the summary. And you want to know if you're being set up. I know I'm being set up. I want to know how, and I want to know how to destroy them for it. Raymond smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Now you're speaking my language. Okay, first things first, we get that DNA test scheduled. I'll use GeneMark Labs. They're independent, reputable, and their results hold up in court. Chain of custody will be airtight. Wayne seemed eager for the test. Too eager. Yeah, I caught that. Raymond leaned back. Here's what I'm thinking. They've got a scam running. Either the kid isn't yours, and they're planning to fake the results, or she is yours, and they've been sitting on this information, waiting for the right moment. Why now? That's what we need to find out. I'll have my investigator run background checks on both of them. See what they've been up to, check their finances, employment history, criminal records, everything. How long? Give me 48 hours. In the meantime, don't talk to them without me present. Don't agree to anything. And Oscar, Raymond's expression turned serious. If that kid really is yours, this changes everything. You'll have rights, but you'll also have responsibilities. Are you prepared for that? Oscar thought of Emily's eyes, his eyes, and her desperate hope when she'd seen him. If she's mine, I want her in my life. And I want her away from whatever the hell Brandy and Wayne are planning. Good. Then let's go to war. Chapter 3. The Investigation. Raymond's investigator was a woman named Martha Hagen, a former FBI agent who now ran a private investigation firm. She sat in Raymond's conference room 2 days later with a thick folder and a grim expression. You've got problems, she began without preamble. Brandy Kemp, now Brandy Simpson, has a history. She's been married 3 times. You were husband number 2. Each marriage ended with her cleaning out joint accounts and disappearing. Husband number 1 filed for fraud charges, but she'd moved states and he didn't have the resources to pursue it. And Wayne? Oscar asked. Wayne Simpson is a piece of work. He's run insurance scams, staged accidents, filed false claims. He's been investigated but never charged. He's smart enough to stay just barely legal. He and Brandy met at the medical billing company where she works. Word is they've been running a side operation, billing scams, identity theft, small-scale fraud. Raymond leaned forward. And their current financial situation? Drowning. They're behind on rent, credit cards are maxed, and Wayne's got gambling debts with some very unfriendly people. Martha pulled out a document. Here's where it gets interesting. 3 months ago, Wayne searched your name online. Extensively. He looked up your restaurant, your net worth, property records. Then he and Brandy started researching paternity law, child support calculations, and custody rights. Oscar felt his jaw tighten. So this was planned. Oh, it gets better. Martha slid another document across the table. I pulled Emily's school records. She's been at her current school for 3 years. But 4 months ago, Brandy tried to enroll her at Riverside Elementary, the school where she coincidentally showed up claiming you as her father. They were setting the stage, Raymond muttered. They probably planned to have her accidentally run into Oscar, but Emily jumped the gun. That's my read. Martha looked at Oscar. I also pulled Emily's birth certificate. It lists father unknown. Brandy gave birth in a different state, no father present. She never filed for any kind of paternity determination or child support. She kept this deliberately quiet until they needed money badly enough to weaponize her. Oscar said coldly, "There's one more thing." Martha hesitated. I talked to Emily's teachers, school counselor, some neighbors. Off the record, carefully. That kid is being neglected at best, emotionally abused at worst. Wayne has a temper. There have been noise complaints, and Emily shows signs of an unstable home environment. Oscar stood abruptly and walked to the window, his hands clenched. Behind him, Raymond spoke quietly with Martha, but Oscar barely heard. He was thinking about Emily's desperate hope, her fear of Wayne, the way she'd flinched when talking about going home. "We need that DNA test," he said finally. "If she's mine, I'm getting her out of there." "Test is scheduled for tomorrow," Raymond confirmed. "But Oscar, even if she's yours, custody battles take time. You can't just take her." "Watch me." "Oscar, I didn't have a father growing up, Raymond. Mine took off when I was 6. I know what it's like to wish someone would come save you. If that kid is mine, I'm not leaving her in that situation one day longer than necessary." Martha cleared her throat. "There might be another angle. If we can prove Brandy and Wayne are running scams, if we can build a case for fraud and child endangerment, we might be able to force an emergency custody situation." "Ow! Give me another week. I'll dig deeper into their financial schemes. If they're running insurance fraud or billing scams, I'll find evidence. We build a case strong enough, we can involve law enforcement and child protective services simultaneously." Oscar turned back to face them. "Do it, whatever it costs." "There's one more thing we need to discuss," Raymond said carefully. "What if the DNA test comes back negative? What if Emily isn't yours?" Oscar was quiet for a moment. "Then they're running a con, and we destroy them anyway." "But Raymond? She has my eyes. My brother saw it immediately." "I know, okay? I just know." "Then let's prove it." The DNA test was conducted at Gene Mark Labs with Raymond present to ensure proper chain of custody. Brandy and Wayne showed up with Emily and a lawyer of their own, a bargain basement attorney named Preston Lowe who looked like he handled DUIs and small claims. Emily brightened when she saw Oscar, but Wayne kept a firm grip on her shoulder. "No interaction until the test is done," he said. The swab collection was quick and professional. Emily was led to a private room, and Oscar did the same. The technician explained that results would be ready in 72 hours and would be sent directly to both sets of lawyers. As they left the building, Wayne caught up to Oscar in the parking lot. "Mr. Buckley, maybe we got off on the wrong foot." Oscar stopped and turned slowly. Up close, Wayne smelled like cheap cologne and cigarettes. "You think? Look, this has been hard on Brandy. She made mistakes, sure, but she's been raising Emily alone all these years. If you really are the father, we just want what's fair. What Emily deserves." "What Emily deserves," Oscar repeated. "Tell me, Wayne, how much do you think I'm worth?" Wayne blinked. "I don't know what you—" "Yes, you do. You research me. You know exactly what my restaurant grosses annually. You know what my house is worth. You've calculated, down to the dollar, what you think you can get out of me." Oscar stepped closer. "Here's what you don't know. I've been poor. I've been betrayed. And I've spent the last 9 years building something real. You're not taking that from me. And you're sure as hell not using that little girl as bait. We're not using anyone. We're protecting Emily's interests. Then why does she flinch every time you touch her?" Wayne's expression hardened. "Be careful making accusations you can't prove, Mr. Buckley. That's slander. Truth is an absolute defense against slander. Remember that." Oscar walked away, aware of Wayne's eyes boring into his back. His phone buzzed, a text from Raymond. "Good job keeping your cool. Wayne's lawyer approached me about a settlement. They want $150,000 cash plus $4,000 monthly child support. Don't respond. Let them sweat. Oscar smiled grimly. They were playing their hand too early. Desperate people made mistakes. 3 days later, the DNA results came back. Raymond called him personally. Oscar, you sitting down? Just tell me. She's yours. 99.9% probability. Emily is your daughter. Oscar had known, intellectually, but hearing it confirmed still felt like the ground shifting beneath him. He had a daughter. A 9-year-old daughter he'd never known existed. Okay, he said finally. What now? Now we file for custody. And Oscar? Martha found something. Something big. Can you come to my office? An hour later, Oscar sat in Raymond's conference room with Martha and Raymond. Martha spread documents across the table like a dealer showing a royal flush. Wayne and Brandy have been running an insurance fraud scheme. Martha began. They file false claims using stolen identities. Small amounts, multiple companies, hard to track. But I found a pattern. Over the past 3 years, they've netted probably $200,000. That's not the best part, Raymond added. Martha also found evidence that Wayne has been doctoring medical records at the billing company where Brandy works. Inflating procedures, billing for services never rendered. He's been doing it systematically. We have enough to involve the FBI, Martha said. Insurance fraud across state lines is federal. But here's where it gets interesting for you, Oscar. If we time this right, we can use this to get Emily out immediately. How? We go to the police and FBI first, quietly. We give them everything. They'll want to build a case, which takes time. But we can negotiate. In exchange for our cooperation and evidence, they expedite charges. Once Brandy and Wayne are arrested, we have grounds for emergency custody. A child can't stay in a home where both parents are in jail awaiting trial. Oscar felt a cold satisfaction settling in his chest. Do it. Oscar, you need to understand, Raymond said seriously. This is going to get ugly. Brandy will fight. Her lawyer will argue you're orchestrating their arrest to steal Emily. They'll drag your name through the mud. Let them. I've got the truth on my side. Oscar looked at the evidence spread across the table. And I've got this. Martha smiled. There's one more thing. I've been documenting everything about Emily's home situation. We have teacher statements, counselor reports, even some photos of bruises that Emily's teacher noted in her file. If Brandy and Wayne try to use her as a pawn, we flip the board. We prove they're unfit parents, and you're the safe option. How long? FBI can move in 2 weeks if we push hard. In the meantime, you should try to spend time with Emily. Supervise visitation, properly documented. Build that relationship. Show the courts you're serious about being her father. Oscar nodded slowly. A plan was forming in his mind, not just to win, but to ensure Brandy and Wayne paid for everything they'd done. To Emily. To him. To probably dozens of other victims over the years. Set it up, he said. All of it. And Raymond? I want full custody. Not partial. Not joint. Full. That's going to be a fight. Then we fight. Raymond and Martha exchanged glances. Then Raymond extended his hand. Okay, let's go to war. Chapter 4. Building Bridges and Gathering Evidence. Oscar's first supervised visit with Emily took place at a family services center. A neutral, cheerful space designed to put children at ease. A social worker named Valerie Glass observed from a discreet distance, while Oscar and Emily sat at a craft table awkwardly. So, Emily said, pushing colored paper around. Are you really my dad? The test says yes. Do you want to be? Oscar set down the scissors he'd been holding. Emily, I'm going to be honest with you. This whole situation is complicated and messy. Your mom and I didn't part on good terms. But none of that is your fault. You didn't choose any of this. That's not an answer. Smart kid. You're right. Here's the answer. Yes. I want to be your dad. I want to get to know you. I want to be part of your life. But that's going to take time, and there are going to be some hard things we have to deal with first. Emily looked up at him with those gray-green eyes, his eyes. Wayne says you just want to look good. He says rich people do that, pretend to care about kids to get good publicity. What do you think? She was quiet for a moment, then, I think Wayne's a liar. He lies about everything. What does he lie about? Emily glanced at the social worker, then lowered her voice. He tells Mom he's working when he's really at the casino. He says they pay bills, but we get eviction notices. He says he loves us, but he's mean when she's not looking. She paused. He hit me once. Just once. I told Mom, and they had a huge fight, and he said it was an accident, that I fell. Mom believed him. Oscar felt his hands clenching, but forced them to relax. Did you tell anyone else? A teacher? The school counselor? I was scared. Wayne said if I told, they'd take me away and put me in foster care where worse things happen. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Is that true? No, Emily, that's not how it works. Oscar glanced at the social worker, who'd moved closer, clearly having heard at least part of the conversation. If a kid isn't safe, they get put somewhere safe. With family if possible. And you have family now. You have me. Ms. Glass approached. Emily, sweetheart, what you just told your father, that's very important. I need to ask you some questions about that, okay? Not to get you in trouble, but to help keep you safe. Emily nodded, and for the next 20 minutes, Ms. Glass conducted a gentle interview while Oscar sat nearby, radiating barely contained rage. Emily described an escalating pattern of Wayne's abuse, mostly verbal, occasionally physical. Brandy was checked out, working long hours and drinking more. Emily spent most evenings alone in her room or at a neighbor's apartment. When the session ended, Ms. Glass pulled Oscar aside. Mr. Buckley, I'm going to file a report with Child Protective Services. This is mandatory given what Emily disclosed. Good. It's going to complicate your custody situation. CPS investigations can take months. I don't have months. That kid goes home tonight to the same situation. I understand your frustration, but there's protocol. What if I told you that within 2 weeks, both Brandy and Wayne are going to be arrested for federal fraud? Ms. Glass's eyes widened. Excuse me? My lawyer and private investigator have been building a case. FBI's already involved. When they're arrested, Emily will need immediate placement. I want to be that placement. That's... Mr. Buckley, I can't discuss active investigations or make guarantees. I'm not asking for guarantees. I'm asking you to do what's best for Emily. When the time comes, I'll be ready. I'll have a safe home, resources, and I'm her biological father. Just remember that. Ms. Glass studied him for a long moment. You really care about her. She's my daughter. I missed 9 years. I'm not missing any more. Over the next week, Oscar divided his time between the restaurant, planning sessions with Raymond and Martha, and supervised visits with Emily. Each visit, the girl opened up a little more. She was funny, sharp, and creative. She loved drawing and had a startling talent for it. She was behind in school because Wayne and Brandy rarely helped with homework, but she was eager to learn. Oscar found himself genuinely falling in love with this kid, his kid. The anger at Brandy for stealing these years from him grew with each visit. Meanwhile, Martha's investigation had uncovered even more. Wayne had a previous arrest warrant in another state for check fraud. Brandy had used multiple aliases over the years. They'd left a trail of victims, former friends who'd loaned them money and never been repaid, landlords who'd been scammed, small businesses they'd defrauded. We've given everything to the FBI, Raymond reported during a meeting at Oscar's restaurant after closing time. They're ready to move. 2 agents plus local police. They'll arrest both Brandy and Wayne simultaneously at their apartment and at Brandy's workplace. When? Oscar asked. 3 days. Friday morning. Emily will be at school. CPS has been briefed. Ms. Glass made sure of that. They'll pull Emily from school and bring her to a temporary foster placement unless I'm approved for emergency custody. Right. I've already filed the petition. We have the DNA test, documented visitation showing you're engaged and appropriate, Ms. Glass's report about abuse in the home, and character witnesses ready to testify that you're stable and capable. Will it work? Judge Marion Howard is hearing it. She's known for prioritizing children's safety over protocol. If we make a strong enough case, she might grant temporary emergency custody pending a full hearing. Martha spoke up. There's one more thing we could do to seal this. Oscar, you need to make your home ready for a child. Emily's room, school supplies, everything. When CPS does their home evaluation, and they will, They need to see that you're not just prepared, you're already treating her like your daughter. Oscar nodded. He'd already been thinking about that. About a 4-bedroom house. One's my room, one's an office, one's storage. I can convert the storage room into Emily's room. Do it fast. Make it special. Show that you've been paying attention to what she likes. Martha pulled out her phone and showed him photos. I documented her current living situation for evidence. Her room is basically a mattress on the floor and a broken dresser. She's got maybe 6 outfits, all worn or too small. No toys except some dollar store art supplies. Give her the childhood Brandy never did. Over the next 2 days, Oscar transformed his spare room. He painted the walls a soft purple, Emily's favorite color. He bought a proper bed with a comfortable mattress, a desk for homework, bookshelves. He stocked the shelves with art supplies after remembering how Emily had lit up talking about drawing. He bought clothes in her size, hung them in the closet. He put up some generic motivational posters, figuring Emily could personalize the space herself later. His brother Louis came over to help and stood in the doorway of the finished room, shaking his head. 9 years ago, if someone had told you be building a little girl's bedroom, I know, you're really doing this. Taking on a kid, going to war with your psycho ex. She's my daughter, Louis. I know, and for what it's worth, I think Mom would have been proud of you. She always said you had a protective streak. Oscar thought of his mother, who died alone in that hospice while Brandy was emptying their accounts. She would never get to meet her granddaughter. That was Brandy's fault too. Come on, Louis said. Let's get some food in your kitchen. Kids eat different than single guys. You're going to need actual groceries. They spent another hour stocking Oscar's kitchen with kid-appropriate food, cereals, sandwich fixings, fruit, snacks. Louis's own kids were teenagers now, but he remembered the basics. What are you going to do about the restaurant? Louis asked as they finished. Ramon can handle day-to-day. I'll still be involved, but I'm stepping back from the kitchen work. Emily needs me more than the lunch rush does. You're going to be a good dad, Oscar. I'm going to try. On Thursday night, Oscar couldn't sleep. Tomorrow, Brandy and Wayne would be arrested. Emily's world would explode, and Oscar would either become her immediate guardian or be forced to watch her go into the foster system while the courts slowly ground through proceedings. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what Brandy was doing right now. Did she have any idea what was coming? Was she planning her next scam, counting money she'd stolen, sleeping peacefully while Emily lay on a mattress on the floor? The rage he'd been controlling for weeks threatened to overwhelm him. But no, he couldn't afford to be angry. He needed to be smart, calm, strategic. Anger was what got people into trouble. Cold calculation was what won wars. At 6 a.m., his phone rang. Raymond, it's happening. FBI just called. They're moving in 1 hour. Judge Howard agreed to an emergency hearing at 10 a.m. We need to be at the courthouse with everything we have. I'll be there. Oscar, good luck. Oscar got up, showered, dressed in his best suit. He made coffee but couldn't drink it. His hands were shaking, not with fear, but with anticipation. Today, everything changed. Chapter 5, The Arrest and Emergency Hearing. The FBI moved with precision at 7:15 a.m. 2 agents and 3 local police officers arrived at Brandy and Wayne's apartment. Another team waited at the medical billing company where Brandy worked. Oscar wasn't there to see it. He was already at the courthouse with Raymond. But Martha had contacts who gave her blow-by-blow updates. Wayne answered the door in a stained undershirt, coffee in hand. The moment he saw the badges, he tried to slam the door. The lead agent, Special Agent Jeffrey Chambers, stopped it with his boot. Wayne Simpson, you're under arrest for wire fraud, insurance fraud, and identity theft. Agent Chambers pushed inside while the others followed. Brandy Kim Simpson, you're also under arrest on the same charges. Brandy emerged from the bedroom, still in her bathrobe. What? No, there's some mistake. No mistake, ma'am. We have evidence of a systematic fraud scheme spanning 3 years in multiple states. You have the right to remain silent. The apartment was searched. Computers and documents were seized. Wayne tried to argue, then threaten, then beg. Brandy started crying, loud, dramatic sobs that didn't move the stone-faced agents one bit. Where's Emily? Agent Chambers asked. At school. You can't take her. We're not taking her, but someone from CPS will be picking her up, given that both her guardians are being placed under arrest. She has a father. Brandy screamed suddenly. Oscar Buckley. He's her biological father. He needs to take her. Wayne shot her a venomous look. Shut up, Brandy. No, I'm not going to jail while Emily goes to strangers. Call Oscar. It was a desperate play. Oscar realized when Martha relayed this. Brandy was hoping to use Emily as a bargaining chip somehow, or maybe she genuinely didn't want her daughter in foster care. Either way, it didn't matter. Oscar was already 3 steps ahead. At 10 a.m. sharp, Oscar and Raymond stood before Judge Howard in family court. The emergency custody hearing was closed. Just the judge, the lawyers, and a representative from CPS. Judge Howard was a black woman in her 60s with keen eyes and an air of no-nonsense authority. She reviewed the documents before her with careful attention. Mr. Buckley, she began, this court is in an unusual position. The child's mother and stepfather have just been arrested on federal charges. The child has no other immediate family on her mother's side. You've submitted a DNA test proving paternity, documented visitation, and a CPS report indicating neglect in the mother's home. You're asking for emergency temporary custody. Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Glass from CPS, what's your assessment? Valerie Glass stood. Your Honor, I've observed 4 supervised visits between Mr. Buckley and Emily. In each visit, he's been appropriate, attentive, and genuinely engaged. Emily has expressed feeling safe with him. I've also completed a home evaluation of Mr. Buckley's residence. It's clean, safe, and he's prepared a bedroom specifically for Emily. Mr. Buckley has stable employment, no criminal record, and references from his community speaking to his character. And the alternative? Foster placement with strangers while this case proceeds through the courts, which could take months. Judge Howard looked at Oscar. Mr. Buckley, you understand that this is temporary? A full custody hearing will still need to be scheduled. Yes, Your Honor. And you're prepared for the reality of parenting? This isn't a 9-year-old you've known her whole life. She's been through trauma. She has a relationship, however complicated, with her mother. I understand, Your Honor. I'm not trying to replace anyone or erase Emily's past. I just want to give her a stable, safe home. And yes, I'm prepared. I've been preparing since the moment I learned she existed. Judge Howard was quiet for a long moment, studying him. Then she nodded. Very well. I'm granting emergency temporary custody to Oscar Buckley, pending a full hearing in 60 days. Mr. Buckley, Emily will be released to you today. CPS will conduct regular home visits to ensure her welfare. This is probationary, and if there are any concerns, this order can be reversed immediately. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Parenting is harder than any restaurant you've ever run. Dismissed. Outside the courtroom, Raymond clapped Oscar on the shoulder. Congratulations. You're officially a dad. Now I have to tell Emily. She's at the CPS office with Ms. Glass. They pulled her from school after the arrests. She's probably scared out of her mind. Oscar's stomach twisted. Let's go. The CPS office was a depressing beige building with worn carpet and fluorescent lights. Ms. Glass met them in the lobby and led them to a family room where Emily sat on a couch, clutching a stuffed animal Oscar had never seen before. Her eyes were red from crying. Emily, Ms. Glass said gently, you remember your dad, Oscar? Emily nodded, looking between them with confusion and fear. Where's my mom? Oscar sat down, keeping some distance to not crowd her. Emily, your mom and Wayne were arrested this morning. They did some bad things with money and insurance fraud. They're in jail right now. Emily's face crumpled. Despite everything, the neglect, the fear, Wayne's abuse, Brandy was still her mother. The only parent she'd ever known. It's okay to be upset, Oscar continued. This is a lot to deal with. But Emily, you're not going to foster care. The judge said you can stay with me. In your new room at my house. If you want to. I have to. No. If you really don't want to, we can figure something else out. But I'd really like you to stay with me. I know I'm basically a stranger still. But I promise I'll keep you safe. I'll take care of you. And we'll figure everything else out together. Emily was quiet for a long moment. Then, can I bring my art supplies? Oscar felt relief flood through him. Yes. Absolutely. And I got you a whole bunch of new ones, too. Okay. She wiped her eyes. Okay. I'll stay with you. Ms. Glass smiled. I'll help you gather your things from your mom's apartment. Mr. Buckley, why don't you take Emily to get lunch? Give her some time to process before going to your house. Good idea. Emily, you hungry? She nodded. They ended up at a diner. Neutral ground, public, non-threatening. Emily ordered pancakes and pushed them around her plate, eating only a few bites. Are you mad at my mom? She asked suddenly. Oscar considered his answer carefully. I'm angry about some things she did, yes. But Emily, whatever happens between me and your mom, it's not your fault and it's not your responsibility. Your job is just to be a kid. Wayne always said I was too expensive, that I cost too much money. Oscar felt his jaw tighten. You're not expensive. You're priceless. And anyone who made you feel like a burden is wrong. Emily looked up at him with those gray-green eyes. Do you really have a room for me? I really do. Purple walls and everything. A tiny smile. Purple's my favorite. I know. After lunch, they picked up Emily's belongings from the apartment. A depressing task that took less than 20 minutes because she owned so little. Then Oscar drove her to his house in one of the better neighborhoods across town. Emily was quiet as they pulled into the driveway. Oscar's house was a modest but well-maintained craftsman-style home with a small yard. Not ostentatious, but comfortable. Safe. This is yours, Emily asked. Yep. Come on, I'll show you around. He gave her the tour. Living room, kitchen, his office. He saved her room for last. Will you open the door? Emily gasped. This is for me. All yours. You can change anything you want. Paint colors, posters, whatever. Make it your space. Emily walked in slowly, running her hands over the desk, the bookshelves, the soft purple comforter on the bed. She opened the closet and saw the clothes, then the art supplies on the shelves. This is... She turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. This is the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me. Oscar knelt down to her level. Emily, this is just the start. I know the last few days have been scary and confusing. I know you probably don't fully trust me yet, and that's okay. But I promise you, I'm going to be the dad you deserve. Deal? Emily nodded, then suddenly threw her arms around him. Oscar hugged her back, this small person who was his daughter, and felt something shift in his chest. A purpose he'd never known he was missing. Deal? Emily whispered. Chapter 6. Preparation and Revelation. The first week of Emily living with Oscar was an adjustment. She was quiet, almost eerily so, conditioned to making herself small and unobtrusive. She cleaned up obsessively after herself, apologized constantly, and seemed shocked every time Oscar offered her food without making her ask. Emily, Oscar said on the third night, after she'd apologized for the fourth time for leaving a glass on a coffee table. You don't have to apologize for existing in your own home. It's okay to make normal kid messes. It's okay to ask for things. It's okay to just be. Wayne got mad when I left things out. Well, Wayne's not here. And I'm not Wayne. Some rules we have. Clean up after meals. Do your homework. Be respectful. But you're allowed to live here. Okay? This is your home now. It took time, but gradually, Emily began to relax. She started leaving her drawings around. She'd come ask Oscar questions while he cooked dinner. She laughed at his terrible jokes. She was starting to be a kid. Meanwhile, the legal machinery ground forward. Brandy and Wayne's bail hearing was a disaster for them. The evidence was overwhelming, and the judge denied bail given their history of fleeing. They'd remain in federal custody pending trial. Brandy's public defender reached out requesting a meeting between Brandy and Emily. Oscar, advised by Raymond, refused. My client has a right to see her daughter, the public defender argued. Your client is facing federal fraud charges and has documented history of neglect and emotional manipulation, Raymond countered. Mr. Buckley is under no obligation to facilitate visitation, especially given that Emily has expressed fear about seeing her mother right now. It was true. When Oscar had gently asked Emily if she wanted to visit Brandy in jail, the girl had gone pale and shaken her head violently. But Oscar knew this was temporary. Eventually, there would be a full custody hearing. Brandy would fight. She'd paint herself as the victim, Oscar as the vindictive ex who'd orchestrated her arrest to steal her daughter. We need more, Oscar said to Raymond and Martha during a meeting at the restaurant. Emily was at school, under Lewis's temporary guardianship, if anything came up. We need to prove beyond any doubt that Emily is better off with me. We have the fraud charges, Raymond pointed out. We have CPS reports. We have Emily thriving in your care. Her teachers have already noticed improvements. It's not enough. Oscar leaned forward. We need to show the pattern. Brandy's done this before. Destroyed people, used people. We need her other victims. Martha nodded slowly. I could track them down. Her ex-husbands, people she scammed. Get them to testify about her character. And Wayne, Oscar continued. We need to prove he's not just a fraudster, but dangerous. The abuse Emily suffered, make it undeniable. That's risky, Raymond warned. You're talking about putting Emily through testimony, maybe having her examined by psychologists. Then we do it carefully. But Raymond, I'm not taking chances. If a judge decides Emily should go back to Brandy after she serves her sentence, or that they should have joint custody, Oscar shook his head. That doesn't happen. I want full custody permanently. I want Brandy's parental rights severed if possible. That's a hell of a high bar. Courts are reluctant to terminate parental rights. Then we make it impossible for them to refuse. Martha pulled out her laptop. Okay, let me show you what I've found so far. She'd been thorough. Photos of Wayne's previous arrests. Testimony from a previous girlfriend claiming domestic violence. Records showing Brandy had abandoned Emily with neighbors for days at a time while she went on trips with Wayne. Medical records showing Emily had been to the emergency room twice. Once for a fall downstairs, once for accidentally burning her hand on a stove. The doctor's notes showed skepticism about both explanations. Jesus, Oscar muttered. How did CPS not catch this? They did, sort of. There's a closed investigation from 18 months ago. Someone reported concerns. CPS interviewed the family. Brandy and Wayne played the perfect parents. Case closed. Happens all the time. Oscar looked at the evidence spread before him. A documented history of abuse, neglect, and fraud. This was more than enough to win custody. But he wanted more than that. He wanted justice. What about their victims? The people they scammed. Martha flipped to another file. I've identified 12 people definitively defrauded by Wayne and Brandy. Insurance companies, individuals, small businesses. Total damages probably north of $500,000. Most didn't press charges because the individual amounts were small enough that pursuing it wasn't worth it. What if we brought them together? A class action or something? Raymond shook his head. Different type of law. But Oscar, why? The federal charges are solid. They're going to prison. Because I want them buried. Oscar's voice was cold. I want them to lose everything. Their freedom, their money, their credibility. I want it so that when the custody hearing comes, there's not even a question. I want the judge to look at Brandy and see a criminal who endangered her child for money. You want revenge, Martha said quietly. I want justice. There's a difference. Raymond studied him. Oscar, I've known you 15 years. You're one of the most level-headed people I know. But this, you're getting close to a line. If you cross it, I'm not going to do anything illegal. I'm not going to hurt anyone. I'm going to use the legal system exactly as it's designed to be used, to protect children and punish criminals. Oscar met Raymond's eyes. They stole 9 years of my daughter's life from me. They used her as bait in a con. They neglected and abused her. And you want me to just let the normal process play out? No. I'm going to make sure they never get the chance to hurt anyone again. Martha closed her laptop. I'll contact the victims. See if any are willing to testify at the custody hearing about Brandy and Wayne's character. It'll paint a picture. Good. What else? I have a contact in the DA's office. She owes me a favor. I can make sure the prosecutor on the fraud case is aware of the custody situation and times the trial accordingly. If Brandy and Wayne are convicted before the custody hearing, it strengthens your case even more. Do it. Over the next 3 weeks, the pieces fell into place. Martha tracked down 7 of Brandy and Wayne's victims who were willing to testify. 3 of them were genuinely sympathetic figures. An elderly man who'd been scammed out of his life savings, a single mother who'd lost money she'd saved for her kids' education, a small business owner who'd nearly gone bankrupt because of their fraud. Raymond prepped them for testimony, not about the fraud, That was a separate criminal case, but about Brandy's character, her manipulative nature, her complete lack of remorse. Meanwhile, Emily continued to thrive. She made friends at her new school. Her grades improved. She started seeing a therapist, Dr. Christy Herrera, who specialized in childhood trauma. Dr. Herrera's reports showed Emily was resilient, but had definite signs of past abuse and neglect. She also noted that Emily had bonded quickly with Oscar and showed all signs of feeling safe and secure in his care. She asked about her mom sometimes. Oscar told Dr. Herrera during one of their parent consultations. Not Wayne ever, but Brandy. That's normal. Despite everything, Brandy was her primary attachment figure for 9 years. Emily's feelings about her mother are complicated. Love, anger, fear, loyalty. It'll take time to work through. Will she want to see her eventually? Possibly. Maybe not. Emily needs to process at her own pace. The important thing is that you don't force it either way and that you don't badmouth her mother, no matter what Brandy did to you. It was hard advice to follow. Every time Oscar looked at Emily, he thought about the 9 years he'd lost, the lies Brandy had told, the childhood Emily had been robbed of. But he bit his tongue and focused on the present. The custody hearing was scheduled for 8 weeks after the emergency placement. The criminal trial for Brandy and Wayne was set for 3 weeks before that. Tight timing, but Martha's DA contact had pushed it through. They're going to plead out, Raymond predicted. The evidence is overwhelming. Their lawyers are going to advise them to take a deal. What kind of deal? Best case for them? 3 to 5 years for each, probably. Wire fraud and insurance fraud carry serious penalties. Oscar did the math. 3 to 5 years. Emily would be 12 or 13 when Brandy got out. Old enough to decide for herself if she wanted a relationship with her mother. But by then, Oscar would have established legal custody. Brandy would be a felon with no resources, no home, no job prospects. She wouldn't be able to fight him. It was perfect. No, Oscar thought. Perfect would be if Brandy had never done this at all. Perfect would be having known Emily from birth. Perfect would be raising her with someone he loved, not fighting battles in court. But this was the reality he had, and he was going to win. 2 days before the criminal trial, Raymond called with news. They're taking the plea deal. Brandy, 4 years. Wayne, 6 because he has priors. They'll be sentenced next week. And the custody hearing? We have the edge now. I'll present the plea agreement as evidence. Brandy pled guilty to felony fraud. Wayne pled guilty to multiple counts. The judge will see convicted criminals versus a stable, loving father. Oscar felt the pieces of his plan clicking into place. What's Brandy's strategy going to be? Her lawyer's going to argue that she made mistakes but loves Emily, that she's willing to do rehab, take parenting classes, whatever it takes. She'll cry, she'll apologize, she'll promise to be better. And we counter with everything: the victims, the medical records, Dr. Herrera's testimony about Emily's trauma, the CPS reports. We show that Brandy's love, if it exists, was enough to stop her from neglecting and endangering Emily. We show that she chose fraud and Wayne over her daughter's safety, repeatedly. Will it be enough to terminate her rights? Raymond hesitated. Maybe. Judges are reluctant, like I said. But Oscar, even if Brandy retains some legal parental rights, she'll be in prison for 4 years. You'll have sole physical custody. And by the time she's out, Emily will be old enough that her preference will carry massive weight in any custody decision. I want those rights terminated, Raymond. Completely. Emily deserves to grow up without that hanging over her head. Then we'll push for it. But you need to prepare for the possibility that we don't get it. Oscar nodded. He'd accept that if he had to. But he was going to fight for complete victory. The night before the custody hearing, Oscar made Emily her favorite dinner, spaghetti carbonara, which he'd taught himself to make properly after she'd mentioned liking pasta. They ate together at the kitchen table, and Emily chattered about her day at school, a friend's upcoming birthday party, a drawing she was working on. She seemed happy, normal, like a regular kid. After dinner, as Emily did her homework at the kitchen table while Oscar cleaned up, she asked, "Is the judge going to make me go back to Mom?" Oscar dried his hands and came to sit next to her. "Emily, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen." But I need you to know something. Whatever the judge decides tomorrow, I'm not giving up. You're my daughter, and I'm going to fight for you no matter what. Okay, okay. She was quiet for a moment. I don't want to go back. Is that bad? She's my mom, and I feel like I should want to, but it's not bad. You're allowed to feel however you feel. I like living here. I like you. Oscar felt his throat tighten. I like you too, kiddo. A lot. Emily went back to her homework, and Oscar returned to the dishes, thinking about tomorrow. About Brandy sitting across the courtroom, probably playing the victim. About Wayne in his orange jumpsuit, maybe glaring at Oscar with hatred. Let them hate him. He'd won. He had Emily. He had the truth on his side, and he had a plan that had worked perfectly. Tomorrow, he'd finish it. Chapter 7. The Custody Battle. The courtroom was smaller than Oscar expected, less dramatic than TV had led him to believe. Judge Marion Howard presided again, her expression unreadable as she reviewed the files before her. Brandy sat at the defendant's table with her lawyer, Preston Lowe. She'd cleaned up for the hearing, hair dyed back to a more natural brown, minimal makeup, wearing a modest dress that screamed reformed mother. Oscar noted the performance with cold detachment. Wayne was not present, already transferred to federal prison after his sentencing. The hearing began with Raymond presenting Oscar's case. He methodically laid out the timeline. Brandy's abandonment 9 years ago, her concealment of Emily's existence, the recent fraud scheme, the arrests, Oscar's establishment of a stable home. Your Honor, Mr. Buckley was denied knowledge of his daughter for 9 years due to Ms. Simpson's deliberate actions. He has proven himself to be a capable, loving father in the brief time he's had with Emily. Meanwhile, Ms. Simpson has pled guilty to federal fraud charges and will be serving a 4-year prison sentence. The choice before this court should be clear. Preston Lowe stood for Brandy's response. Your Honor, my client acknowledges her mistakes. She's taken responsibility by pleading guilty. But she's still Emily's mother. She raised that child from birth, provided for her as best she could, and loves her deeply. To permanently sever their relationship would be cruel to both of them. Ms. Simpson is willing to complete any programs, any rehabilitation the court deems necessary. She's requesting that parental rights be maintained so that when she completes her sentence, she can work toward rebuilding her relationship with Emily. Judge Howard looked at Brandy. Ms. Simpson, you concealed your daughter's existence from her father for nearly a decade. What? Brandy dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I was scared, Your Honor. Oscar and I had a bad breakup. I found out I was pregnant after he left. I didn't leave. Oscar interjected. You served me with divorce papers. Mr. Buckley, you'll have your turn to speak, Judge Howard said firmly. Continue, Ms. Simpson. I thought he wouldn't want the baby. I thought it would be easier to raise her alone than to deal with a custody battle. I know now that was wrong. I should have told him, but I did the best I could. Your best included using your daughter as bait in a fraud scheme targeting her father, Raymond said coldly. Preston Lowe objected. That's a mischaracterization. Is it? Raymond opened a folder. Your Honor, I have text messages between Ms. Simpson and Mr. Wayne Simpson discussing their plan. May I approach? Judge Howard nodded. Raymond handed copies to the judge and the opposing counsel. Oscar had seen these already. Martha had recovered them from seized phones. They were damning. The text showed Brandy and Wayne discussing how to play Oscar, how much money to ask for, how to use Emily's desperation to meet her father as leverage. One text from Wayne read, once he sees the kid is really his, he'll pay anything to look like the good guy. Easy score. Brandy's face paled as Judge Howard read. Your Honor, I was in an abusive relationship with Wayne, Brandy said quickly. He manipulated me, controlled everything. I didn't want to involve Emily, but he insisted. You sent these texts, Ms. Simpson, using your phone, discussing your daughter as a score. Judge Howard's voice was cold. Continue, Mr. Hand. Raymond called witnesses. First, Valerie Glass from CPS, who testified about the conditions in Brandy's home, Emily's disclosed abuse, and her positive adjustment to Oscar's care. Then came the victims. The elderly man, Albert Taylor, who'd lost his retirement savings to one of Wayne and Brandy's scams. The single mother, Holly McPherson, who described how Brandy had befriended her specifically to gain access to her personal information for identity theft. She seemed so nice, Holly testified, wiping tears. She invited me to coffee, asked about my kids. I thought we were friends. Then I found out she'd used my information to file false insurance claims. It destroyed my credit. I almost lost my house. Preston Lowe tried to argue that these testimonies were prejudicial, irrelevant to the custody matter. Judge Howard overruled him. Character is absolutely relevant when determining custody, counselor. I'll hear these testimonies. Dr. Christy Herrera, Emily's therapist, testified next. She described Emily's trauma symptoms, nightmares, anxiety, fear of abandonment, and the progress she'd made in just weeks under Oscar's care. Emily has clearly been living in a state of chronic stress, Dr. Herrera explained. She exhibits hypervigilance typical of children in unstable or abusive homes. Since placement with Mr. Buckley, these symptoms have begun to decrease. She's forming a healthy attachment, showing appropriate trust, and beginning to process her trauma in a safe environment. And if she were to return to her mother's care? Judge Howard asked. Immediate regression. Possibly worse. Emily has expressed fear about seeing her mother and outright terror about seeing Wayne Simpson. Forcing contact would be re-traumatizing. Finally, Raymond called Oscar. Oscar took the stand and answered questions about Emily's daily routine, her schooling, her emotional state. He described their growing relationship with genuine warmth. Do you love your daughter, Mr. Buckley? Raymond asked. Yes, completely. What do you want for her future? Stability, safety, a childhood where she doesn't have to worry about adults' problems. A chance to just be a kid. Preston Lowe cross-examined him. Mr. Buckley, isn't it true that you orchestrated Ms. Simpson's arrest to gain custody of Emily? No. I reported evidence of federal crimes to the FBI. They investigated and found enough evidence to prosecute. I didn't orchestrate anything. I just told the truth. And you expect us to believe you did this out of civic duty, not revenge? I did it to protect Emily, and to make sure Brandy and Wayne couldn't hurt anyone else. You're quite wealthy, aren't you, Mr. Buckley? Your restaurant is very successful. I do well, yes. Must be nice to have the resources to hire expensive lawyers, private investigators, to fight battles that ordinary people couldn't afford. Oscar leaned forward. You know what was expensive, counselor? Rebuilding my life after Brandy emptied our accounts and disappeared. Starting over with nothing. That was expensive, but I did it. And now I'm using those resources to protect my daughter. If that bothers you, I don't really care. Preston Lowe had no response to that. Finally, Judge Howard called for a recess. I need to review all evidence and testimony. We'll reconvene in 1 hour for my decision. Oscar, Raymond, and Martha waited in a conference room. Oscar couldn't sit still, pacing while Raymond made notes and Martha checked her phone. I think we've got it, Raymond said. Her lawyer couldn't counter any of our evidence. The texts were the nail in the coffin, Martha added, proving this was a planned scam, not just Brandy making poor choices. Oscar nodded, but couldn't shake his nervousness. So much was riding on this. An hour later, they reconvened. Judge Howard looked tired but resolute. I've reviewed all evidence and testimony, she began. This is a difficult case, but ultimately, my decision must prioritize the child's welfare above all else. Oscar held his breath. Ms. Simpson, your actions over the past decade demonstrate a pattern of manipulation, fraud, and poor judgment. You concealed Emily's existence from her father, raised her in unstable circumstances, exposed her to an abusive stepfather, and ultimately attempted to use her as leverage in a financial scheme. Your guilty plea to felony fraud charges confirms that you prioritized illegal activity over your daughter's well-being. Brandy was crying now, but Judge Howard continued unmoved. Mr. Buckley, in contrast, has shown himself to be a responsible, stable, and loving father despite having only weeks to adjust to parenthood. Emily has thrived in his care. The evidence is clear. Judge Howard looked directly at Brandy. I am terminating your parental rights, Miss Simpson. Mr. Buckley will have full legal custody of Emily. You will have no visitation rights, no decision-making authority, and no legal claim to the child. This termination is permanent. Brandy let out a wail. No, you can't. She's my daughter. She was your daughter, Miss Simpson. But you forfeited that through your actions. Perhaps when you're released from prison, Emily will choose to have a relationship with you. But that will be her choice, not yours by right. Judge Howard banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. Raymond grabbed Oscar's shoulder. You did it. Full custody. Complete victory. Oscar felt dizzy with relief and triumph. He'd won. Not just won. He'd achieved total victory. Brandy had no legal claim to Emily anymore. She was his daughter, fully and completely. As they left the courtroom, Brandy was being led away, still sobbing. She looked at Oscar with pure hatred. I'll never forgive you for this, she spat. Never. Oscar stopped and met her eyes. I don't need your forgiveness, Brandy. I need my daughter safe. And now she is. He walked away without looking back. Chapter 8. The Aftermath and New Threats. Oscar picked Emily up from school himself that afternoon. She'd been with Lewis during the hearing, not wanting her in the courtroom for the difficult testimony. How did it go? Emily asked nervously as she climbed into his car. I have full custody. Permanent. You're staying with me. Emily's face broke into a huge smile. Really? Forever. Forever. She threw her arms around him, and Oscar hugged her back, overwhelmed with emotion. This was his daughter. His. That evening, they celebrated with ice cream and a movie. Emily fell asleep halfway through, curled up next to Oscar on the couch. He looked down at her peaceful face and felt a fierce protectiveness he'd never experienced before. But the peace was short-lived. 3 days later, Oscar received a visit at his restaurant. Two men in suits, definitely law enforcement of some kind. They showed badges. State Police, White-Collar Crime Division. Mr. Buckley? I'm Detective Jeffrey Chambers. This is Detective Ramon Landry. We'd like to ask you some questions about Wayne Simpson. Oscar felt a prickle of unease, but kept his face neutral. I've already given statements to the FBI regarding his fraud activities. This isn't about the fraud. It's about his death. Oscar went very still. His death. Wayne Simpson was found dead in his cell this morning. Apparent suicide, but there are some irregularities we're investigating. I don't understand what this has to do with me. Detective Chambers pulled out a notepad. Mr. Simpson kept a journal. In his final entry, he claimed you had threatened him. Said you had connections that could reach him anywhere. Did you ever threaten Mr. Simpson, Mr. Buckley? Absolutely not. I had no contact with Wayne after the arrests except seeing him during legal proceedings. Can you account for your whereabouts last night between 8 p.m. and midnight? Oscar's lawyer instincts kicked in. I'm not answering any more questions without my attorney present. Am I being accused of something? Just being thorough, sir. Wayne Simpson's death occurred while he was in protective custody after claiming he feared for his life. We need to eliminate all possibilities. Then eliminate me through actual investigation, not fishing expeditions. I had nothing to do with Wayne's death. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a business to run and a daughter to pick up from school. The detectives left, but Oscar's mind was racing. Wayne was dead. Suicide? Possible. He'd been facing 6 years in prison. Massive debt, complete ruin. But the timing was suspicious, right after losing the custody battle. He called Raymond immediately. They what? Raymond sounded alarmed. Oscar, don't talk to them again without me. And you need to seriously think, did you do anything that could be construed as a threat? No, I was careful. Everything I did was legal. Oscar paused. But Raymond, I did hire Martha to investigate Wayne thoroughly. What if she found something I don't know about? What if someone else had reason to want Wayne dead? I'll call Martha. In the meantime, sit tight. Don't panic. Wayne was a career criminal with gambling debts and enemies. His death probably has nothing to do with you. But 3 days later, Oscar received a letter. No return address, postmarked from inside the state prison system. It was from Brandy. Oscar, I know you killed Wayne, or had him killed. You're probably smart enough that they'll never prove it, but I know. You wanted to make sure I had nothing left, that I'd be completely alone in here. Well, congratulations. You won, but you should know something. Wayne kept backups. Evidence about your restaurant, your finances, things you wouldn't want public. He told me about them before he died. in case anything happened to him. I have access to those files now. So here's the deal. You're going to set up a trust fund for me for when I get out. $200,000. In exchange, those files disappear. If you don't, I release everything to the press, the IRS, whoever will cause you the most pain. You took my daughter. Don't think I won't take everything else from you, too. Brandy. Oscar read the letter 3 times, feeling a cold rage building. Brandy was trying to blackmail him from prison. And worse, she was implying he'd had Wayne killed. He called an emergency meeting with Raymond and Martha. This is bullshit, Martha said immediately after reading the letter. I investigated your restaurant as part of the background check. Your finances are clean. There's nothing to find. Then why is she so confident? Oscar demanded. Because she's desperate and grasping at straws, Raymond said. Oscar, this is extortion. We can have her charged. No. Oscar thought quickly. If we charge her, it becomes public. The allegations about Wayne's death, the blackmail attempt, all of it. Even if I'm completely innocent, the publicity could hurt the restaurant and, worse, could hurt Emily. Kids at school, parents talking. So what do you want to do? I want to call her bluff. If Wayne had anything on me, which he didn't, it would have come out during the FBI investigation. They seized all his computers and files. Brandy's lying. Probably, Martha agreed. But Oscar, about Wayne's death. I had nothing to do with it. I know, but I need to tell you something. Martha looked uncomfortable. When I was investigating Wayne, I found out he owed money to some very dangerous people. Loan sharks connected to organized crime. I documented it as part of the report, but didn't think much of it because it wasn't relevant to the custody case. Oscar went very still. How much did he owe? About $50,000. And these aren't people who accept late payments. So you're saying, I'm saying Wayne's death was probably exactly what it looked like. He was facing 6 years in prison, had enemies waiting for him outside, owed money he'd never be able to pay. He chose the easy way out. But the detectives said he was in protective custody. And people commit suicide in protective custody all the time. Oscar, you're looking for conspiracies where there probably aren't any. Wayne was a coward who faced consequences for the first time in his life and couldn't handle it. Oscar wanted to believe her, but something still fell off. Over the next week, the investigation into Wayne's death continued. Oscar heard through Raymond that they were looking into Wayne's criminal associates, his debts, and yes, his relationship with Oscar. But nothing pointed to foul play beyond Wayne's own paranoid journal entries. Finally, the medical examiner ruled it's suicide. Case closed. Brandy's blackmail letter went unanswered. 2 weeks later, another letter arrived, this one more desperate. Fine, $100,000. Final offer. I know you have something to hide. Everyone does. Oscar wrote back one line. I have nothing to hide, and I don't negotiate with criminals. Enjoy your 4 years. He never heard from her again. Chapter 9. Justice and New Beginnings. 6 months later, Oscar's life had settled into a new normal. Emily was thriving. Straight A's in school, friends, weekly art classes that she loved. She still saw Dr. Herrera occasionally, but the trauma symptoms had largely faded. She was just a happy, well-adjusted kid. The restaurant was doing better than ever. Oscar had promoted Ramon Landry to executive chef, giving himself more freedom to be present for Emily. He still oversaw operations, but wasn't chained to the kitchen anymore. Brandy remained in federal prison. Oscar never mentioned her to Emily unless Emily brought her up first, which became increasingly rare. Emily had made her choice. She wanted Oscar as her father, full stop. One Saturday morning, Oscar was making pancakes when his doorbell rang. He wasn't expecting anyone. Emily was at a sleepover at a friend's house, his first night truly alone since she'd moved in. He opened the door to find Martha standing there with a folder. Sorry to drop by unannounced, she said, but I thought you'd want to see this in person. Oscar let her in and made coffee while she spread documents on his kitchen table. Remember how Brandy tried to blackmail you? Claiming Wayne had evidence about your finances? Yeah, it was bullshit. Well, Wayne did have files, but not on you. Martha smiled grimly. On Brandy and himself. Detailed records of every scam they ran, every person they defrauded, everything. Wayne was keeping insurance, probably planning to use it against Brandy if she ever turned on him. Where did you find this? Wayne's lawyer contacted me. Apparently, Wayne had a safety deposit box that his lawyer was instructed to open in the event of his death. The contents were these files. The lawyer, doing his due diligence, reviewed them and realized they were evidence of additional crimes. He handed them over to the FBI. Oscar leaned back. How much additional trouble is Brandy in? A lot. The FBI is reopening their investigation. They've found evidence of identity theft, tax fraud, money laundering, crimes they weren't initially charged with. Brandy could be looking at additional years added to her sentence. Good. That's not all. Martha pulled out another document. Several of the victims Wayne and Brandy defrauded are filing civil suits. They're going after whatever assets Brandy has left, which isn't much. But they'll get judgments. When Brandy gets out of prison, she'll be drowning in debt and legal judgments. She'll be financially destroyed. Oscar thought about the woman who'd stolen 9 years from him, who'd used his daughter as bait, who'd tried to blackmail him for prison. He felt no pity. She deserves it. There's one more thing. Martha hesitated. The FBI asked me to testify about my investigation into Wayne's gambling debts and criminal connections. They're looking into whether his death really was suicide or if it was made to look like one. By his loan sharks? Possibly. Or by someone in prison who owed them money and was offered debt forgiveness in exchange for a favor. It happens. Oscar was quiet. If it wasn't suicide, I'm glad I had nothing to do with it. But I'm not going to pretend I'm sorry he's gone. No one's asking you to be. Martha stood. You won, Oscar. Completely. You got your daughter. Brandy's going to pay for years, and Wayne's dead. It's over. After Martha left, Oscar sat in his kitchen, thinking, was it over? The legal battles, yes. Brandy was in prison and would be for years. Emily was safe, happy his. Wayne was dead, and Oscar genuinely had nothing to do with it. But something Martha had said nagged at him. You won completely. Had he? He'd gotten justice, sure. Revenge, even. Brandy and Wayne had paid for their crimes. But 9 years were still gone. Emily had still suffered through a childhood of neglect. Oscar had still missed watching his daughter grow from an infant to a 9-year-old. No amount of legal victories could give him those years back. But he could give Emily better years going forward. That's what mattered now. That evening, Emily came home from her sleepover bubbling with stories about movies they'd watched and games they'd played. Oscar made her favorite dinner, and they ate together while she chattered away. Dad, she said suddenly, I was thinking, my birthday's coming up in a few months. Can we have a party? Like a real one, with my friends and a cake and everything. Oscar smiled. Of course. What theme do you want? Art. Like, we could do a paint party where everyone makes their own canvas. And maybe pizza, and... As Emily planned her party with infectious enthusiasm, Oscar felt something settle in his chest. Peace, maybe, or discontentment. He'd won his war. He'd protected his daughter. He made sure the people who'd hurt them faced consequences. Now it was time to just be a dad. 2 years later, Oscar stood in the crowd at Emily's middle school art show. She had 3 pieces displayed, vivid, confident paintings that showed real talent. Other parents complimented him, and he beamed with pride. Emily spotted him and waved, then ran over. What did you think? I think you're amazing.